And tough yard, still on his feet. Jeremy McNichols. I don't think they're going to get him. And he is in for the Washington touchdown.
Excuse me, Jeremy Chin. My name's Jeremy McNichols, and I'm going to break your tackle and about 3 to 4 others on the way to a 60-yard touchdown run. That made it 17-10. Washington crushed the Raiders from that point forward, 41-24. A much-needed win for Washington. Good morning. Max is with me. You'll hear from Luke McCaffrey on the show today. Ben Standig as well. That was the perfect setup for an NFL win. Not to diminish anything that Washington did, because Washington played extremely well yesterday in all 3 phases of the game. But the Raiders aren't very good. They weren't very good yesterday off a short week. And as Eddie Jordan once said, you got to harvest them nuts. And that was a nut to harvest yesterday. You don't have to be great right now. You don't have to be healthy right now, which this team is not. But you have to get wins so that when you become a better team, when you become a healthier team, if and when that happens, the games you play mean something. Yesterday was a nut harvest win. Thank you, Eddie Jordan, many years ago for that description, as the Wizards were flailing but somehow capturing a few wins here and there during the regular season. A few takeaways here in the open before I get to my game take. And I'm going to start with this. Jalen Lane's going to be a star as a punt returner, and that's going to have a big impact on games for this football team. When they drafted Jalen Lane on day 3 of the NFL draft, there was celebration in the draft room. And I know you see celebration for every pick, but there was real joy that he was available there, because they were looking for somebody that could give them a jolt, somebody that could flip the field, somebody who could score other than Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin and the players that they have on offense. Jalen Lane, you could see signs of it last week against the Packers. And then yesterday, he took that punt 90 yards. He has everything you love to see in a star punt returner. If you think this is premature, maybe it is. I'd love to hear from Brian Mitchell on Jalen Lane. He is, first of all, a great catcher of punts. He does not bobble them. He's got very good hands, very good eyes. Secondly, he sees it as it's coming towards him. And then with that vision, he is decisive. He is great with that first cut. And then he's got game-breaking speed. I think out of yesterday's game, there was a lot to like across the board, but Jalen Lane, to me, looks like he could be a major part of the team's success if they are to have success this year. I think we're only a few more returns away from teams starting to consider kicking away from him. He is a gifted, talented punt returner. They knew it on draft day on day 3. They were not sure what they were going to get from a receiver standpoint. They felt like he could eventually develop into something of an offensive player, but they felt like they got the best punt returner in the draft. And already 3 weeks into the season, he's got a 90-yard punt return. That is the first punt return for a touchdown since 2016. Jamison Crowder against the Ravens on the road. There's so much to pull from this game, and we're going to go through it, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to do it. But I wanted to get to Jalen Lane right from the beginning, because he had a big day. They didn't even need him to have a big day, really. But there is an absolute talent right now at a position that we haven't had in a long time on this team. He's going to change games during the course of his career as a punt returner. Loved what I saw last week and really loved what I saw yesterday. All right, I've got 4 additional takeaways, sort of high-level takeaways from the game, and then I'll get to the game take, the things I liked, didn't like, and other observations. Give you guys a chance in about 30 to 40 minutes to weigh in via the phones. Number one is this. Yesterday when I said it's the perfect setup, if you've followed the NFL, if you've bet the NFL, there's a perspective that you have about teams that are tired versus teams that are well rested. We've talked a lot about, Warren Sharp's, net rest advantage data. This was the best net rest advantage game of the year for Washington, who overall for the season has the third worst net rest advantage. They are at a disadvantage this year by about 13 days, meaning, you look at the schedule. How many days does your opponent have to prep for the game? How many days do you have to prep? More often than not, it's 7 and 7, Sunday to Sunday. But in this case, Washington was Thursday. The Raiders were on Monday night. And then you throw in, they're coming east from the Western time zone playing an early game. And yeah, it was the perfect NFL setup. Bettors understand this. And I think teams understand it to a certain degree as well. And Washington's mantra yesterday, right from the beginning, was we are going to be physical. We are going to take it to them. We are going to muscle the Vegas Raiders until they say uncle. They came out in heavy personnel, 6 offensive linemen. We talked about that possibility last week with Trent Scott. They ran it down the Raiders' throat on offense into the end zone after a big kickoff return by Deebo Samuel. Talk about a return threat in the kickoff game. How about Deebo and 2 massive kickoff returns in the last 2 games? They were flying around on defense. They were hitting on defense. They were hitting on special teams. This was Quinn and his staff's plan to muscle and take it to Vegas with a level of energy, enthusiasm, and physicality that just the Raiders were not set up to handle yesterday. I don't know if they're set up to handle it at all. They are terrible up front along their offensive line, and they were hurt yesterday with their best guard, who was active but didn't really play much at all in the game. We talked about this as a weakness, that the defense could lead the way up front in particular. That Raider offensive line is pitiful. It is really awful. And then it wasn't fresh on top of that. And Washington came out and they took it to the Raiders. Number one, loved the fact that they understood the opportunity. This was the setup. And if you came out and punched them in the mouth early, it was going to be a long day. Now, it was 10-10, but it never felt kind of like the Giant game in the opener. It never felt like Washington could lose to the team they were playing yesterday at home. They were the better football team all the way around. Number two, another takeaway from yesterday's game. Washington's got such a great quarterback situation in terms of their backup situation. Marcus Mariota, first of all, is a very good NFL backup. Probably, a bottom third still starter in the NFL. He could be a lot better than several quarterbacks currently starting in the NFL. But the quarterback situation in Washington, in terms of their backup situation, is perfect. They have a pro in Mariota. They've got a pro in Mariota who's not desperate to start. He is as desperate to play as he's as desperate to mentor Jaden Daniels as he is to play. He's always prepared. He's got great versatility as a player. He fits the system perfectly. You never have to change the offense when he's in there. It is a really good backup quarterback situation in D.C. Yesterday was his first start since 2022. Remember, he did not start that Carolina game. He came in. There was already a 10-0 lead in that game. And he came in the second half of the Cowboy game in the season finale. He was yesterday, considering that just a few weeks ago, he was a quarterback that was dealing with, Achilles tendonitis. He looked so physically fit. He was sharp, he was quick, he was fast, he was an excellent decision maker. He was outstanding in the zone read game, outstanding in the RPO game. He played like Marcus Mariota, the Heisman Trophy winner 10 years ago. He really looked good. The offense is, I think, for Mariota, Kingsbury's offense, the best offense for him in his professional career. I think if he had had Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator right from the jump, Marcus Mariota would have had a ton of success as a starter. He had some success, but not consistent success. Part of that is because there are college elements in this offense. A lot of college elements. You've got zone read. You've got options. You've got RPO in the game. You've got tempo in the game in that offense. Love the fit for Mariota. Love the backup quarterback situation in Washington. Now, do I think they could win 10, 11, 12 games if Mariota had to start 17? I don't. But that's not what they're asking him to do. I will get to his game in much more detail. Needless to say, he's going to have a very high grade for me in the game. Another takeaway from yesterday, and I've already sort of alluded to this, just a reality check on yesterday. In addition to this being the perfect setup, from a rest standpoint, from a west to east standpoint, the Raiders are not very good this year. They are in Pete Carroll's first year figuring it out. They are really bad up front offensively. And I thought going into the game that this had a chance to look like the Giant game defensively, although it was not perfect defensively. And we'll get to that in the game take. And really on the other side of the ball, minus Max Crosby, they're not that good. So you take, this isn't a good team with, this is the wrong day for them, the right day for the opponent. Again, perfect setup after getting wrecked in Green Bay to come back and get a win. I really felt like this was a get-right game, especially if Jaden were quarterbacking. I thought that it would be a blowout. Well, guess what? They didn't even need him to quarterback to put up 41, 34 offensively, 7 special teams-wise, although the Deebo Samuel kickoff return also set up points as well. But a really good day for Washington and a perfect opponent for the situation. Lastly, man, the injuries are piling up, something we did not have to deal with last year. I can already hear the calls coming in this week on Terry McLaurin's quad injury. This is going to be all about the time that he wasn't practicing this summer. It might be, it might not be. By the way, didn't he score on that play? How did they instant review it and get it wrong? And Quinn had already used a challenge, and it was not, a desperate situation to challenge your 1st and goal at the 1, but Terry scored on that play. But Terry's got a quad injury. Lattimore has a concussion. The secondary issues yesterday with injury: Trey Amos, calf, Percy Butler, hip, and then Will Harris, ankle, and it's bad. According to, a lot of the reporting yesterday, I think Ian Rappaport had this. Where is it? Yeah, Will Harris suffered a fractured fibula in the win. He's having more tests to determine the full extent of the injury, but Harris is out for the foreseeable future. So Washington's injuries are piling up, not to mention, of course, Eckler and Wise, Bates and Noah Brown. And of course, this will be a week, unless for whatever reason, Quinn decides I'm not going to play possum, during this week. I'm going to tell everybody up front where we are. There's no reason to do that. Make Atlanta prepare for both as long as you can. That is an advantage. And I would imagine we would get that. But we are on Jaden Daniels' watch for week 2. There was a lot of reporting prior to the game yesterday. I'll read this quote from Jeremy Fowler. Jaden Daniels is out for this week, and it really wasn't even close. This was Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, pregame, which begs the question, what is he looking like for week 4? So I checked with a source over there who said it's just too early to tell on that knee sprain. They want to see how it responds, closed quote. That from Jeremy Fowler, ESPN. Quinn speaks today at 3:30. I would assume that Chris Russell will carry that. We'll get updates on all of the injuries. But yes, we're on Jaden watch for week 2, but the injuries have piled up for this team, and injuries are a reality in pro football. They're not an excuse. I know that, next man up, and players and coaches will tell you that. That doesn't erase the fact that that next man up very often isn't as good as the man that he's replacing. So teams get impacted every year by the loss of key players. And Washington had multiple starters out yesterday, and they could have even more Sunday when they face the Atlanta Falcons, a team that got beat yesterday 30-0. Michael Penix Jr. got benched late in the game. He threw 2 picks. He fumbled. And the Falcons, who looked so good a week ago on Sunday Night Football at Minnesota, shutting the Vikings nearly out of that game, got beat by the Panthers 30-0. The NFL is truly, already we've seen it through 3 weeks. The, emphasis on week-to-week league, it never disappoints. The Giants in week 1, then the Giants in week 2. Russell Wilson was terrible last night after being brilliant in week 2. The Browns beat the Packers, who were a Super Bowl favorite, after crunching Washington a week ago Thursday night. And then you had the Panthers, who looked horrendous in their first 2 games, not only beating the Falcons, shutting them out 30-0. If you think that means anything as it relates to Sunday's game against Atlanta in Atlanta, you're not paying attention to the NFL. Anything can happen. And by the way, the desperate teams in this league are typically the most dangerous, and Atlanta will feel desperate after the performance they put on yesterday. Washington right now is a 2 to 2.5 point favorite in Atlanta, without really knowing for sure who the quarterback will be. There you go. So some big takeaways. God, I was impressed with Jalen Lane. The quarterback situation in Washington from a backup perspective is as good as any. I'm not saying Marcus Mariota is the best backup in the NFL. I'm saying the situation is the best. I loved the way they took it to the Raiders. That was a well-coached outfit yesterday. Unlike last Thursday night, recognizing the setup and just taking it to a team that wasn't fresh, that probably was hurting a bit coming into this game, and they went 6 offensive linemen on that opening drive, heavy personnel, the number of formations, the number of backs that played in the backfield, the number of offensive linemen. And by the way, it wasn't the offensive line that we thought it would be. Last week, changes to that. But they really came out flying around. Hard-hitting game, really hard-hitting game, especially from Washington's perspective. But yes, impressive. They needed it. They're 2-1, and they're going to Atlanta next week to try to get to 3-1. All right, I will get to my game take. You'll hear my grade on Marcus Mariota, all the things that I liked from the game, the things that I was concerned with watching the game, and a bunch of other observations. We'll get to that when we come back, and then your chance at about 10:45, 10:50 to start lining it up on the phones at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980. We are also, remember, on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there.
And Lane is going to go back inside the 10. Here comes a flag dropped right away. And Jalen Lane gets past Cole, the punter. He's going to go all the way for a touchdown. Check that flag way back inside the 10.
Jalen Lane's 127 punt return yards in the game, the third most by a rookie in a single game in franchise history, behind two players most of you have never heard of, Ricky Harris and Ted Wilson. The 90-yard punt return, the first of his career, and Washington's first since Jamison Crowder did it in Baltimore back in 2016. And it's the first rookie to record a punt return for a touchdown since Desmond Howard back in 1992. For Washington, by the way, a 60-plus yard kickoff return and a 60-plus yard punt return in the game hasn't happened since Brian Mitchell did it in a game in New Orleans back in 1994. Washington 41, the Raiders 24. Marcus Mariota has been a part of two 40-point-plus games. The Carolina game last year and yesterday's game against the Raiders. All of our NFL talk today is brought to you by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game all season long, kicking off with the juicy Week 4 matchup between Washington and Atlanta. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. All right, let's get to my game take. All right, what I liked, didn't like, and a few other observations from the game. I'll start with Marcus Mariota. I thought he was an A yesterday. There you go. I didn't bury the lead. There's my grade. Think he was an A. I mean, obviously the fumble probably knocks him down a little bit from, a little bit higher than an A, like an A+. I just thought everything looked so sharp, so comfortable, so decisive. Even on the fumble, that zone read keeper, it's 22 yards. He looks fast, and he leaps up into the air and had the ball stripped from him. But look, the opening touchdown drive, it's all Rodriguez until the 3rd and goal from the 2. And that I do not think, I'm pretty sure that was not a designed run. I think that was a scramble. I thought he was incredibly decisive, made the decision, saw the daylight, got to it, scored. It was a 7-0 lead. Just liked everything I saw from Marcus Mariota. He was 15 of 21 for 207 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, took 1 sack, avoided a few others. But the 15 of 21, at least 3 drops. The Debo drop, the Jalen Lane touchdown drop. Terry had a second long ball that was catchable that he didn't pull in. He just, he's a pro, man. He saw the field. He was ready for the game. The ball came out quickly. The ball was accurate. It went where it was supposed to go, I think, most of the time. And as a runner, man, he looked like Heisman Marcus Mariota. And again, like, this is a few weeks off of Achilles tendonitis where we weren't sure he'd be active for the early portion of the season. 6 rushes for 40 yards, a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown. When he did get pressured, did you see how quick that ball was out on time, where it was supposed to go? And look, it helps that they were really good around him, meaning they ran the football. They couldn't do it against the Packers for whatever the reasons were. But it really does. Part of protecting a quarterback is running the football, and they ran it from the start. Marcus Mariota, on the list of things that I really liked from the game, I thought he was an A in this game. The rushing attack, Washington, for the second time in 3 games, over 200 yards rushing. This was a rushing attack by committee. And let me just start with this, man. The 6 offensive linemen, they started with that with Trent Scott. We had, Chris Paul in for Brandon Coleman, who was inactive. Interesting, right? Not injury related. The coach talked about, competition. Andrew Wiley in for Allegretti. Allegretti played some. Trent Scott, played. I have not seen the snap counts. They were not out last night when I looked at it, and weren't out early this morning. Let me see if I can get. I'm gonna guess Trent Scott was in for at least a third of the snaps as a sixth offensive lineman, slash eligible offensive lineman. Here they are. Here are the offensive snap counts. Trent Scott played, what did I just say? A third of the snaps? Did I just say a third? I think I said a third. Maybe I didn't say a third. Maybe I said half. I thought I said a third. 33% of the snaps, 19 of the 58. He was in there. But the running back by committee, everybody contributed. Everybody looked good. They had two backs, sometimes three backs in the backfield with Debo back there. It started with Rodriguez. I think it started with Rodriguez because, again, I think they wanted to set the tone by being the more physical team. We're putting Trent Scott out there. We're going to ram this thing down your throat. You're, a team that isn't that good to start with, and you're on short rest. I don't know if Rodriguez is going to be the lead back for every game in terms of being out there first. It might be Bill some games. It might be him. But I think it was him yesterday because they wanted to set the tone, and they did that. 5 runs after Debo's opening kickoff, 4 by Rodriguez, and then the scramble touchdown by Mariota. They had 201 total rushing yards, 174 in the first half. Rodriguez, 11 for 39. By the way, that very first run of the game after the Debo kickoff return, I'm pretty sure Rodriguez got his face mask yanked and it wasn't called. Bill Krosky-Merritt, 8 for 26. Man, I love his vision. He had a jump cut in the backfield when it was going to be a -1, -2, and he ended up with a big run. His vision, his cutting ability is first rate. And then Jeremy McNichols. We've known that they have loved McNichols, even though most of us, me included, thought they had just gotten a dude that probably wouldn't make the team when they signed him. Well, he's been excellent on special teams. He's intelligent. He does exactly what they want him to do. And with Eckler gone, we're going to see a lot of Jeremy McNichols, especially in that third down role for Eckler. What a game for him, that 60-yard touchdown that broke the 10-10 tie where he broke 4 or 5 tackles, including running basically over Jeremy Chin. Debo back there, 3 rushes, 18 yards, had a reverse, had a wildcat snap run. And then Mariota, 6 for 40, 201 yards by committee, 6.3 yards per rush, 3 touchdowns. Would have been nice had they been able to do that a little bit against the Packers, but the Packers are not the Raiders on defense. And they weren't prepared for that kind of game plan when Bates went out. They were assuming Bates would be there. Now they've got something that they can go to. Look, they were top 5 in rushing last year. I'm going to assume that they are very high in the through 3 weeks now in rushing yards average per game. Yeah, they are second right now behind Buffalo in the NFL at 157.3 yards per game. And that is essentially 2 games. That is the Giant game, and that is yesterday's game. It is interesting, right? When Cliff Kingsbury got hired, even though he had guys like, Chase Edmonds and James Conner and did run the football a bunch, with Kyler Murray as well, there was this, feeling about air raid and Mike Leach and all this stuff. And they won't have an NFL running attack. They have a running attack. It's not traditional NFL style, but I mean, the formations yesterday, that diamond formation were essentially, in that diamond formation, you got 3 backs in the game. You basically have 3 backs and no tight ends. That is what you would call, I think, 30 personnel. Maybe they did have kind of Trent Scott in on some of those plays as an eligible tight end or as an eligible tackle. It's a dynamic attack, and the quarterback's a part of it, which makes it so hard to defend. There are a lot of teams that way now in the league. We know that. But when your quarterback like Jaden or Mariota is a threat to run the football, and you are, as Mike Shanahan described many years ago, 11 on 11 in the run game. It is advantage offense. Loved it. Loved everything they did. I thought Cliff came out and really was a rough Thursday night game against the Packers, no doubt. They were ready today. The balance, the emphasis on the run is something, by the way, remember Dan Quinn, kind of suggested they got away from and didn't need to get away from against the Packers. Number 2 on the list of things I liked, the rushing attack by committee. Number 3, just the return yards and the special teams, overall. But I mean, you had in this game 245 return yards. Debo, 2 kickoffs for 93 yards, including the 69-yarder in the opener, in the opening kickoff, 46.5 yards per kickoff return. McCaffrey had a 25-yard kickoff return. He actually stumbled. There was room on that one, too. Jalen Lane, 5 punt returns, 127 yards, including the 90-yarder for the touchdown. So even in the other 4, he still had, went for 9+ yards a return. But the average with the 90-yarder in there is 25.4 yards per return. That had to be one of the better return yardage days in franchise history, I would assume. 245 return yards for Washington. That's going to help you in a lot of games, man. They're not taking the ball away again. They didn't take it away enough last year. Through 3 games, and I'll get to that when I get to the list of things I didn't like, no takeaways. But when your special teams are flipping the field on returns, and, oh, by the way, not giving anything up on coverage of kicks, which was exceptional again yesterday. Once again, they have very good coverage units. Yesterday, Vegas's punt returns, 2 for 10 yards. Kickoff returns, they averaged 22 yards per kickoff return. Outstanding job in the return game, in the kick coverage game, hidden yardage all over the place, big plays, big chunk plays. That's on the list of things that I liked. Explosive plays from the game yesterday on the list. 69-yard opening kickoff return by Debo. The 90-yard punt return by Jalen Lane. The 60-yard touchdown run by McNichols. The 57-yard catch and run by Terry McLaurin. Didn't have any explosives in week 2. And Quinn had talked about, some of the explosives and getting some back into the offense. They had them yesterday, albeit against a defense that isn't very good, especially on the back end. And they didn't tackle well at all yesterday. Also on the list of things that I like, let's switch it to the defense. We've talked about special teams. We've talked about the offense. We've talked about the explosive plays. How about Washington's run defense? Pretty excellent yesterday, and now through 3 games, really solid. Keep in mind, the Giant offensive line banged up and not very good in the opener. The Raiders offensive line banged up and horrendous yesterday. And they've struggled to run the football, in their previous games. 28 carries, 93 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. Genty had a couple of good runs. He's going to be a good back. But Washington dominated with their defensive front, the line of scrimmage, and made it very difficult for the Raiders to run the football. Overall, Genty was 3.7 yards per carry, despite having an 18 and a 14-yard run. Washington did another 3 straight games now. We'll see if it holds up against teams that are better equipped to run the football. Josh Jacobs got yards when he needed them, but still overall, I thought Washington's effort against the run at Lambeau was, B- territory. So they've had 2 A days against the run and a B- day against the run. Off to a good start. They have changed the way they are up front. Wise's loss didn't hurt him yesterday. Payne was outstanding yesterday, I thought. Luvu, I thought, was outstanding yesterday. Kinlaw, maybe not in the statistical category. Armstrong is having himself a season right now. Really versatile. But yeah, Washington's run defense on the list of things that I like. Then the pass rush. They had 5 sacks. I don't know how Geno escaped like 3 or 4 others. That should have been an 8 or 9 sack day. He was under siege all day long. When he had time, it was a problem, and I'll get to that. But I can't figure out how the hell he got away from at least 2, 3, 4 other sacks. Wagner had 2. Armstrong had 1. Von Miller got 1. Payne, Louvu were really good up front. John Baptiste had 1, I'm pretty sure, right? John Baptiste, yeah. 90. He's a good player. They like him. The pass rush against a porous offensive line, for sure, was a big plus on the day yesterday. How about Jeremy Reeves yesterday? Had to come in for Will Harris. I thought he played really well. He really hits. I thought Washington defensively really got after it and really hit people all day long. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. I mean, special teams, offense, running the football, Mariota, the return yardage, the coverage on kicks, and then stopping the run and getting after Geno Smith. All of that was good. You know, I liked at the end of the half. Some of you were really on Quinn with me to talk about clock management at the end of the first half. You know, the bottom line is, yeah, they could have taken timeout number 3 earlier, but then the Raiders would have just run it and run the 40 seconds off anyway. When Washington got the ball back from their own 35-yard line with 27 seconds to go, the big play clearly is the face mask on the Mariota sack. That's a big, big play. I really liked what they did with 8 seconds to go, running Mariota, designed run to get to the sideline to get those 4 extra yards. I don't think teams do that enough, especially when teams are sitting back saying, we'll give you the underneath. You know, you've got no timeouts left, but, you know, with 8 seconds to go, you can't, you know, get the clocked situation. You can't spike it after completion in the middle of the field. And instead, they ran the quarterback to the sideline for 3 or 4 extra yards to give Matt Gay a chance. Of course, that run by Mariota just absolutely devastated the head coach, Dan Quinn. Man, did that head hit hard off the ground. That replay was tough to watch. He was bloodied, battered. Hopefully he's all well. He was fine in the press conference afterwards. He's a tough guy, but man, Mariota just ran right into him. But I love the play. You know, Gay's 56-yard field goal, the Raiders called that timeout, and Gay got that first swing in, and he missed that first one, made the second one. All right, the list of things that I didn't like and a few other observations from the game when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right. Happy Monday, everybody. All right, everybody. Happy Monday. The Commanders, they get the win over the Las Vegas Raiders by a score of 41-24. Marcus Mariota with solid performance, throwing for 200+ and 1 touchdown, throwing on a running touchdown on top of it all. Injuries continue to pile up for Washington as Terry McLaurin left the game with a quad injury. Marshawn Lattimore leaves with concussion, and Will Harris fractured his fibula and will be out for the foreseeable future, according to Ian Rappaport. We look around the NFC East. The Eagles, they win on a blocked field goal as time expires over the Rams, 33-26. The Cowboys, they get upset by the Chicago Bears, 31-14. And the Giants, another subpar performance, this time against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. They lose 22-9. The Caps, they get the win in a preseason matchup versus the Boston Bruins by a score of 5-2. Sonny Milano with 2 goals and 2 assists in his first NHL action since November 4th. Hendrix Lapierre, Bogdan Triniev, and Ryan Chesley, all with tallies, should be some fierce competition for those final roster spots. The Nats, they play a little spoiler in their win over the Mets. Jacob Young with one of the greatest catches you'll ever see in the 5th inning. Mitch Parker, called in for the final few innings of the game, earns the save, giving up only 2 hits and no earned runs. Nats win 3-2. They will shift their focus back to the Atlanta Braves for one final series. Brad Lord expected to get the start versus Hurston Waldrop. First pitch at 7:15. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:45. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, Hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1, and you can catch Den's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Downhill physical football team. Mariota hesitates to the end zone. Touchdown, Commanders.
Marcus Mariota yesterday, outstanding, I thought, in Washington's 41-24 win. The rushing attack by committee, give the offensive line credit, the big offensive line or the larger offensive line, the changed offensive line, but it included a third of the snaps with Trent Scott out there as a sixth man eligible tackle. By the way, real quickly, just before I get to kind of the other part of my game take, Ben tweeted out, I guess Jeremy Fowler from ESPN had this first, that Washington is meeting with former Packers safety Darnell Savage today. Savage worked with Commanders assistant Jason Simmons as a rookie in Green Bay. Washington, of course, yesterday had multiple DBs injured, including Will Harris, and Harris's injury looks like it is maybe a season-ending injury, or certainly an injury that could keep him out for a significant amount of time. Darnell Savage, just as an FYI, was really the guy that Washington's draft brass, group, including Jay Gruden, who was, involved in evaluating players. That's who they wanted to draft, not Dwayne Haskins. We know the story of the owner basically forcing them to take Dwayne Haskins at 15. The two players that they really, really liked in that draft were Darnell Savage and Montez Sweat. They ended up trading back into the first round to get Sweat, but had they not been forced by the owner to take Haskins, I think Savage would have been the pick. He ended up going 6 picks later to Green Bay, and has been most recently in Jacksonville, but is available. We'll see if that works out. Savage, by the way, a former Terp, grew up, I think, on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. All right, let's get to the list of things that I did not like. Repeating on the list of things that I liked: Mariota, the running game, the return yards, 245 of them, lots of explosives, the defense against the run, the pass rush. Love the way they swarmed right from the beginning. I really think they understood this situation yesterday, and they took it to the Raiders physically. I mean, they set the tone after that kickoff return with 4 straight Rodriguez runs, and then a 3rd and goal Mariota scramble for a touchdown. Loved it. All right, what didn't I like? Well, still too many mistakes, man. So many of them in the first half. They haven't played a clean game yet. It's not like they're turning the ball over a lot. Yesterday was their first turnover. And to be honest with you, when he fumbled that ball, I was like, yeah, but did you see the run? Like, it was such a great run. I'm like, God, he looks good. He fumbled the football, but even in that moment, I'm like, this is going to be a good day. You had penalties. I mean, you had 2 plays in which both Tunsil and Connerly Jr. were penalized and flagged on the exact same play. Drop passes, again, that's been an issue this year. You had an out-of-bounds kickoff that cost field position, cost them points. You had a missed field goal, a short one. Man, I mean, when Gay missed that 37-yard field goal, in that moment, I'm sure you all were thinking what I was thinking, which is line the kickers up for Tuesday. Let's get him in here and let's figure out an answer. But he redeemed himself with a 56-yarder, his second opportunity on that 56-yarder. And then coverage issues. I mean, look, the Raiders were hampered yesterday. That is truly a bad offensive line, and they were missing, maybe their best guard, interior offensive lineman. He was active, but he didn't play much. And you've got communication issues on the back end. I'm not going to be able to sit here and explain them to you, as well as maybe Steve Suter will when he comes on to break down the film this week. But you've had communication issues secondary-wise. The pass rush certainly made that a moot point, but the Raiders had big chunk plays. Look, I said on Friday, if you don't stop the run and you don't get pressure, Geno can throw it, and he's got speed. Tucker is wide open still in this game. Thornton can really run. We know what Brock Bowers is. We know what Jacoby Myers is. I mean, the first play of the game, you go bootleg, and no one's near Jacoby Myers on a 45-yard chunk play. They had a 61-yard play, a 45-yard play, a 30-yard play, a 20-yard play. Geno ended up throwing for 289, and you can call a lot of the 289 garbage yards. Okay, that's fair. A lot of it was in the fourth quarter, but you got some back-end issues, and now with the injuries, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the injuries didn't play a part in the communication issues yesterday. They probably did. But we've had back-to-back games of coverage issues, and now you got a banged-up secondary. It's an improved pass rush, but it's an improved pass rush against 2 woeful offensive line situations. The Giants didn't have Andrew Thomas in the opener. The Raiders may have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, especially when they're banged up like they were yesterday, missing Jackson Powers. I can't. We're gonna eye discipline, eyes. That's what Witt Jr. said on Thursday over and over again. But you're going to have to get that figured out because Justin Herbert will make you pay for that. The Cowboys offense will make you pay for that. The Lions offense will make you pay. Of course, God, man, I'm kind of glad now that we don't play the Eagles until late in the year with all the injuries. But that seems to be an issue. That's why, by the way, you just can't, based on, some videos that are put out during training camp, you can't come to conclusions when Terry's not even a guy that they're covering in camp. I think Trey Amos looks good. I do. But right now, the secondary is not a strength, and it's now a shell of its former self health-wise. So there's some issues there for sure. But I think topping the list of things from the game that I didn't think were very good, just a lot of mistakes still. You didn't, you could overcome them against the Giants because they were the Giants in week 1. You could overcome them yesterday, even without your starting quarterback, because that was a Raiders team and it was kind of the perfect scenario in terms of, rest, et cetera. But you got to cut some of that stuff out. And the coverage stuff, I mean, they have speed. And when they didn't get to Geno and they gave him time, it was, target practice. It was easy. But, of course, the pass rush disrupted most of it. No takeaways is on the list. That's 3 straight games, no takeaways. You know what, though? I'll tell you what. If they keep playing the run the way they've played it, if they keep hitting the way they've hit, if they can get that kind of pass rush pressure consistently like they did against the Giants, like they did against the Raiders yesterday, they took advantage of bad offensive line situations. I think they'll come. I think they will. They had an opportunity with that ball that Geno forced. Amos, made a good play on it. The ball got tipped up into the air. Harris had a shot at it when he was still in the game. But in the 3 games they've played, 1 total turnover. It was Mariota's fumble. So they've only given the ball away once this year in 3 games, but they have not gotten a takeaway. You get a couple of takeaways yesterday, and that's 55 to, 13. And then last on the list of things that I didn't like, just another game in which there are a lot of injuries. We will find out more as the day goes on, but it looks like Will Harris is out for a while. We'll find out about Terry's quad. We'll be on Jaden watch this week, Noah Brown watch, John Bates watch. In addition to Lattimore, who was concussed, Amos. This is what does seasons in. These kinds of outbreaks of injuries. You can overcome them if your best players remain, healthy and active. But they've lost starters and several of them here. And they'll probably be without more in next week's game against Atlanta. Some other observations real quickly. Debo is just... he's having that year that I hoped he would have, like we all hoped he would have. It's, 14 games left, and health is always the key. But, man, has he proved to be valuable on kickoff returns, out of the backfield, as a receiver, in the short, quick game, in the screen game. He recovered the onside kick yesterday at the end. I love the Wildcat. I love the way they went up-tempo. I love some of the formations that Cliff had out there. I probably should have put Debo on the things that I liked list, but he did have a dropped pass in the game, and that has been an issue with him at times during his career. But what a weapon they added in Debo Samuel. Fingers crossed that he stays healthy, because he makes them a real difficult team to check. Let's call it as it is. I know how many people out there are big Terry fans, and I'm a Terry fan too. I just don't put him at the same level that some of you do with respect to other receivers. But right now, Debo, along with the quarterback, are the 2 most dangerous players Washington has on offense. I don't know how Terry's long play was conclusively overturned without even the need of a challenge. That did not make any sense. You can't do that. If you're going to whistle, if you're going to let the referees know, hey, he didn't score, we got the instant review. The instant review's got to be right. That was not right. That was a touchdown, okay? By the time his hip touched, because his knee never touched, by the time his hip touched, the ball had already crossed the plane. I thought that, the drop touchdown pass by Jalen Lane, how is that not offsides? Are you kidding me? It's a clear offsides, neutral zone infraction. Washington thought they had a free play, as they should have. There was also a helmet-to-helmet call against number 20 on the Raiders. Debo was not a defenseless receiver in that moment. He was a runner. I don't like that call. What else did I have? Marcus Mariota had an intentional grounding call late in the game that I actually didn't think was intentional grounding. I think he and Jalen Lane just had their wires mixed up. And I think he threw in the general direction where he thought Lane would be. I'm not saying that it would have been a completion, but I don't think it was grounding. And then he avoided a grounding in the first half when Crosby got really quick pressure on Connerly Jr. That was a problem. Poor Connerly, the pass rushers he's faced. But he did a great job of just flicking the ball in the general direction. It was a screen call. Chris Myers, man, yesterday was not very good on the call. I like Mark Schlereth, but they both missed that it wasn't called grounding because it was a screen and there was a back in the general area. What else did I have? Oh, I had one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll do it when I come back. It was an interesting call by Dan Quinn on a penalty following a touchdown. But now it is your turn. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Your reaction to Washington's 41-24 win over the Raiders. What did you like? What didn't you like? Anything I missed? Your shot. Phone lines are open. Back after this.
Guys on the football field, Mariota just running it.
And here throwing it because he wants to close the game out, but instead McCaffrey will take it into the end zone. He didn't necessarily have to seal it, but when you have that chance, you don't want to pass it up.
Luke McCaffrey with his first touchdown catch of his short NFL career. That was big for Max. That was really big for Denton. Denton basically last year and this year has had a touchdown bet on Luke McCaffrey in every single game he's played. And he finally got one late yesterday. I think he gets open. What do I know, though? But it certainly appears to get open. You'll hear my conversation with Luke McCaffrey before the end of the show. Talk to him when he was in the locker room last night after the game. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Want your calls, your thoughts. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention. So after the Jalen Lane punt return yesterday, there was unsportsmanlike conduct is the call when the gunner goes out of bounds on the punt coverage unit and then doesn't come right back inbounds. And so since Lane scored on that play, Washington had the option of taking the 15-yard penalty on the kickoff or on a 2-point conversion, which would have been half the distance to the goal, or half the distance to the goal on a kicking 1-point PAT. With the new kickoff rules being what they are, going back to last year, and now the 35 being the touchback rule, meaning you've got to, land that in that area. If you take it on the kickoff, the only thing that changes is that the kicker moves from his own 35 to the 50. I don't know if that makes it an easier kick into the landing zone, a harder kick into the landing zone. I don't know. But Quinn took it on the kicked PAT. So he decided to move it from the 33 half the distance to the goal, meaning that the 15 would have been the line of scrimmage. So they move it to the 7. Now it's a 22-yard extra point, 24-yard extra point, whatever it would have ended up being. You could have taken it on the 2-point. Now that return made it 26-10. So I'm glad they kicked. I don't think there would have been any reason to go for 2 there. You want to make it a 3, worst case or best case for the Raiders, a 3-score game, up 27-10. But just another one of those kind of decisions that isn't a no-brainer anymore because of the kickoff rules. I don't know. It would be an interesting question to ask Larry Izzo. Is it harder to kick from the 50 following something like that into the landing zone than it is from 15 yards back? Maybe that's why they made the decision. Washington is 2-1 after the 41-24 win over the Raiders. They go to Atlanta. 4 of their next 5 games are on the road. At Atlanta, then at the Chargers, who are undefeated. Then they get the Bears at home on a Monday night before heading to Dallas and Kansas City back to back. So a big stretch of the schedule coming up here for them. They're a banged up football team for sure. And we will all week long, really beginning today at 3:30 when we get an update from Quinn on a lot of these injuries, find out where the team is. But that was one they needed to get. That is, in the NFL, the closest thing to kind of a get-right game because these teams are so close, the league's so week to week. But the whole advantage rest-wise and otherwise, but Washington was banged up and without their starting quarterback. But, man, Marcus Mariota played well. All right, 301-230-0980. Your turn. Let's start with Ralphie in Rockville. Ralphie, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. I thought yesterday was a great win. I felt like our team, we played really balanced in all three phases. But my only thing is I wonder why we run the ball more when Jaden is not playing. I just felt like when we have 20 carries a game with the running backs, that's when we do really well. And that's across the league. I wonder why that is. Like yesterday when I'm watching the Green Bay game against Cleveland, they ran the ball. They just dominated Green Bay. And that's what I was confused that we didn't do last week.
Who dominated Green Bay yesterday?
Cleveland. They ran the ball. Flacco didn't play well at all.
they didn't score until the fourth quarter.
But I mean, they still ran the ball. You see what I'm saying? Like
The rookie
dominated
running
the
back,
trenches.
Judkins, did he have a good day against Green Bay? That's interesting. I just know the score was 10-0 until about 5 minutes to go in the game. I would have preferred more runs against the Packers. I would have preferred to at least try it. I think they felt like they were in a bind after they lost Bates. But we've seen plenty of games with Jaden where there's been an emphasis primarily on rushing the football. I mean, I'm just going back to the opener when Merritt, when Bill had 82 yards in the opener. I'm going to guess that the running backs in that game had 20-plus carries, didn't they? Against the Giants. Krosky Merritt had 10, Eckler had 6, Jeremy McNichols 4, Debo 1. So that's 5. That's 21 carries in the game. Jaden had 11. They rushed for 220 yards in that game. So we've seen the same kind of an attack with Jaden there. We just didn't see it against Green Bay. And I think they felt they were handicapped without Bates in that game against a defensive front that they could not handle with their offensive line. That is for sure. Thanks, Ralphie. Let's go to Keith in Brandywine. Keith, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kev? How you doing, man? Hey, listen.
What's up, Keith?
Something that bothered me yesterday, and I'm watching it every game so far at home. When Debo, I'm going to start with Debo first. When he's warming up, he's not doing a warm-up with the team, right? I mean, they're doing the drills coming down the field. He's just walking or skipping. And yesterday, you could tell that some of the players had the binoculars on them tight. And some of the players were getting irritated with that because when he would go over there to them, trying to talk to them, they was like, you saw a couple of guys waving their hand like, come on, man, get serious or get out of my face type thing. And I'm being honest, man, that he's not warming, he's not doing their drills. He's just walking up and down. They'll go down to the 30 and come back up. He's just walking. He's not doing the drills. But you can watch, everybody who's hearing my voice, just watch and see the next time when he's out there. And then another thing I didn't like is we don't have that kill spirit, man. When we have a team down, I'm like, finish him. I feel like we went into a let's run the clock out mode way too 9 minutes, 10 minutes too early, trying to just run and then punt. And we don't have the defense like that. And then the third thing I want you to comment on is, Jaden didn't play yesterday, but did you see the report that the Giants rookie, that the one of the number one pick said about Jaden when he's like, what did you think about Jaden? He said, talk too much. He want to come up there and come in our huddle and talk. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk to you.
That wasn't the rookie. That was Brian Burns who said that. I don't know. Look, I don't know what you're talking about with respect to Debo. I'm not disputing it at all. I don't have that observation. I've not heard anything other than what we've watched on the field and has been confirmed by people out there. They think he is quite the weapon. In terms of the game yesterday, I mean, they took a 34-10 lead to the fourth quarter. I mean, this game was over. So in terms of how they played the fourth quarter, they had a 34-10, and by the way, they were losing players. That's where you want to get out of there. But I don't think they dialed it back. They ended up throwing a touchdown pass with 2 minutes to go in the game. But thanks for the call, Keith. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jameer in DC. Jameer, go ahead.
What's up, Kevin? It's been about a month or two since I called in, so good to hear from you again.
You too.
But one thing that I did notice, I did love the way the coaching went along in the game. Special teams was fantastic all the way around. Outside of the missed kick, I think with the kicker, if you're going to struggle beyond the 50, you should be automatic within it. So we got to figure out something with the kicker. I understand 50-plus, but these shorter kicks, we got to be automatic.
Well, 50-plus has been his problem, last year, and he missed 2 on Thursday night against the Packers from 50-plus. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. They're not moving on from Matt Gay. He ended up making 2 out of 3. He hasn't missed an extra point this year, right? Am I right about that? Mm-hmm. He hasn't missed an extra point this year.
I believe that's correct.
What is he on field goals total after yesterday? 2 or 3 yesterday. He didn't kick one in the Giant game. And did he make one against the Packers?
So
he made one of the 50-yard.
Yeah, he made
3 for 6. He's 3 for 6. By the way, 3 for 6 with 3 50-yard plus attempts in Green Bay. 4 of the 6 have been 50 or out, and he's made 2 of them, right? So he's 2 for 4. He missed a 37-yarder. You can't do that in the NFL. I'll concede that. I would bet you they're not about to dump Matt Gay. And his kickoff out of bounds is not helpful, but you're going to see some of that this year because of the attempt by kickers to kick low, squibby-like kicks that hit in that landing area. So you're going to see some of that. I've seen a bunch of those that have gone out of bounds. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I don't think they're moving on from him. What else did you have? What else did Jameer have? Is Jameer still there? No Jameer. Let's go to Joe in Springfield. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Good, Joe.
So first off, I'm going to start off what I like, and I say it again, like I said last week, Deebo Samuel. I mean, whether he is catching the ball, running it on a reverse, or even better yet, returning a kickoff return. I mean, whatever you want him to do. I mean, you get him the ball, you see the speed. It works. I mean, I'm so glad. I mean, it's been only 3 games of the season, but I love what Deebo's done so far.
Yeah, me too.
The defense, and we mentioned the sacks, but Bobby Wagner and Von Miller, I mean, they definitely wanted to earn this. But I got to tell you, one player they mentioned this during the game, Deron Payne. His name may not appear in the stat sheet, Kevin, but Deron Payne was disruptive yesterday on that offensive line. I mean,
it's 2 games with Deron really playing at a high level. Yeah. Not so much last Thursday night against the Packers. But again, I think we really do have to take into consideration that the Raiders' offensive line was bad. And, arguably their best offensive lineman really didn't play at all. I'm going to check the snap count. I was looking for him on the inactive list, and he wasn't inactive, but then I didn't see him in the game.
Okay, but while you do that, one quick side note, I'll let you
Powers Johnson he played 2 special team snaps. That was it. He didn't play at all offensively. They were a horrendous offensive line. Go ahead, Joe. Finish up.
All right. Well, my side note, listen, yes, we beat a team that we were supposed to beat in Vegas. However, now we're going on the road, facing a team that got shut out. They're going to be upset. We cannot overlook what's going on this week because we got Atlanta, and we got a very tough test coming up because the Chargers, the Bears, I mean, yes, they got the first one against Dallas yesterday, but then you got the Cowboys, Chiefs. This is nothing to be excited about. Yes, we just beat Vegas, but we got to handle our business. I know Dan Quinn's going to do that, but back to work at Atlanta because these injuries are piling up, and that is definitely a concern moving forward. Who knows what happens? I don't want to lose any more defensive players, and Terry's quad is a question mark, but we can't lose anybody else like that. So take care, Kevin.
Good job, Coach. Fire them up for next week. Next week, just because the Falcons lost 30-0 against the Panthers, that just doesn't mean anything in the league, honestly. I mean, every week is a new week. Let's go to my guy, Steve, in Houston.
I did. Hey, what's up, Coach?
What's up, Steve? How you doing, Goon?
Good. You don't sound excited to hear from you.
I'm always excited to hear from you. Always.
Okay, good. Same here. Hey, look, this might be nitpicking a little bit, but Terry McLaurin is always getting tripped, ankle tackled. And I've seen a lot of that last year. Like I said, of course, it's a positive play. I think it went for 50-something yards on the deep
57 yards.
And it was definitely a touchdown.
This is nitpicking. Several people did it during the offseason about him getting, shoestring tackled right before the end zone. But you know what? I'll take the 57.5. He scored on that one. Let's be fair. That was a bad review, a bad instant review. They got it wrong.
It was. They did. Because I think his hip, it was on top of the defender, and his knee definitely never touched. So,
right.
Did you see the camera angle that they showed that they said they used to confirm that? I know it's on X. It's a horrible camera angle. It's like the replay booth is better, but I think that is a thing though with him. These shoestring tackles, it's really a thing though. But like I said, it's nitpicking, but I'll take the 57 yarders.
Yeah.
Glad that we won the game, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jalen. Jalen, go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
What's up, Jalen?
So I absolutely love how we set the tone from opening kickoff with Deebo, taking it back and getting us in the plus
Good blocking
territory
on that play, too.
drive.
I didn't point that out. Excellent blocking on both of the returns. Luke McCaffrey has been a good blocker in those situations, but continue.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. The details are very, very important. The touchdown on the opening drive was big. I thought that, again, that goes back to coming ready, coming prepared to just hit Vegas in the mouth and to let them know, who we are. I liked how we stopped the run. I liked how we kept constant pressure on Geno, which was great. I also didn't see or hear Brock Bowers' name a lot, which was, gratifying considering how we've struggled recently with slowing down tight ends. So it was great to see us just play a well-rounded game. Now, obviously, there's certain things that we can continue to improve upon. But overall, I like how impactful, we were both offensively, defensively, especially with the running game. I think one of the previous callers had mentioned why don't we do that more with Jaden? I agree. I think that Cliff needs to utilize this run game a lot more, especially when Jaden comes back. That could definitely limit him from getting hit. But overall, hopefully we can continue this momentum into Atlanta. Thank you for taking my call and helping bring it go.
Yeah, thanks for the call. Appreciate that. They've run the ball a lot with Jaden. Okay. Now, last year, Jaden ran too much. He was the leading rusher too many times. We wanted to see that change. Marcus Mariota in his games has run the ball a lot. He had 6 carries for 40 yards yesterday. If you go back to his games last year, in fact, he was more often pulling it on the zone read than even Jaden was. He had 11 rushes in that Carolina game last year, 5 rushes and a half against the Cowboys. So Marcus runs it a lot too. It's the design of the offense. The quarterback is a part of the run game, but Jaden's been in plenty of games in which the running backs, have rushed for a lot of yards. I mean, you just have to go back to the NFC win against Detroit when Brian Robinson had a big game and Eckler had a big game, and they rushed the ball. We've had plenty of those games where the running backs, the Arizona game last year, Jaden just also was a participant, but so has Marcus Mariota been a participant when they've run the ball. They were, what did they finish last year in rushing? Top 3 in regular season rushing. And now they're number 2 in rush offense. They're gonna run the football, but the quarterback is gonna be a part. They were number 3 last year, regular season, 3rd in rush offense behind Baltimore and Philly. So far through 3 games this year, they're 2nd behind Buffalo. Guess what? In Buffalo, James Cook's really good. We don't have a James Cook at this point, but the quarterback's involved in that run game too. The teams that have been the top rushing teams in the league recent years have been teams where the quarterback is part of the run game. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels / Marcus Mariota. All right, I see everybody on hold. We'll continue to take calls. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What'd you like? What didn't you like? Any other observations, reaction to yesterday's 41-24 win over the Raiders?
triumph, a gift to this area to be able to bring RFK back to the city.
Mariota throwing and open is Terry McLaurin. They wanted the deep shot. They got it. And touchdown, Washington.
Should have been a touchdown. It was instant reviewed and called down short of the goal line. That was a bad instant review. This from someone who is a coach in the area. Bobby Wagner's game yesterday is one of the more fascinating games of the year by an off-ball linebacker. He was incredible as a pass rusher, very good against the run. He can't cover anybody anymore. Yeah, I did notice in coverage, Wagner, I think on one of Tucker's touchdowns, had that area. And he had a couple of coverage issues, I think, in the Green Bay game. But man, Wagner as a run stopper and as a pass rusher yesterday was outstanding, as was everybody outstanding as a pass rusher and a run stopper against the Raiders yesterday. All right, 301-230-0980. Ben's going to join us at 12. You'll hear from Luke McCaffrey next hour as well, but we'll keep the phone lines going. Ronnie, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning. How y'all doing? And thanks,
Good, Ronnie.
Max. I was pretty happy with the overall effort. This is a week-to-week league. 1 week we could look like chicken something, and the other week we could look like chicken salad. I wanted to piggyback off Wagner. He did play really good yesterday. And the whole defensive line, that's the best I've ever seen the special teams play in a while. The one thing I am curious about, I want to find out. I can't wait to find out about Cigargate. Tommy didn't get no problems with his cigar yesterday.
There were issues. He'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. Yeah.
Yes, I'll be looking forward to listening to that.
He texted me about 12 times pregame. He was upset about a lot of the way it was handled.
You guys are radio gold. You two are radio gold, dude. Radio gold.
Tommy's been smoking cigars before Skins games at FedEx at Northwest Field for 20-some years now, and apparently now they won't let him do it. But no one cares about that. What do you got on the game?
Well, I just want to get that through, but just overall effort, and I think with the injuries, I'm looking forward to find out with the injuries. We're going to be banged up pretty much all year. We just got to get it together and just keep going, and don't sleep on Atlanta because they can definitely take us out. But I love the show, I love the podcast, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, appreciate that, Ronnie. Let's go to Sabah's been on hold. Let's go to Sabah. Sabah, go ahead.
Hey there, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call. I thought it was a great game yesterday. Let's see. My good is one who I wasn't a fan of, Marcus Mariota. I'm becoming a big fan of his. He's playing like the number 2 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner that he is. I thought he made very good decisions. He ran when he had to, not when he wanted to, and he threw when he wanted to, not when he had to, and that made his decision-making more quick and more decisive. I like the McNichols guy and the Mason guy. And I thought it was the bad I had was on Seattle, where not Seattle, the Raiders. I was thinking Pete Carroll, sorry.
Yeah.
Where they know our kicker can't make over a 50-yarder. So right before the half, he actually missed and they had called timeout and then gave him another chance. I thought that was so comical. I'm like, why would you do that? Because he actually missed.
Well, teams do it all the time, you know, when they have the timeout to spare.
But that's dumb. Against our kicker can't make a 50-yarder to save his life like the first time he kicks it. So, but anyhow, then I got one last thing for you that I'm sure is not going to be popular, but I want to know on the bad side, why was our starting quarterback, the future of the franchise, not with a headset on, listening to every single play and word when we're on offense and talking to Marcus Mariota and the offensive coordinator on the sideline? Instead, he was sort of spectating. And I said, well, maybe this is just normal because it's a day off for him. So I looked at what J.J. McCarthy was doing. He had a head thing, an earpiece in his head, and he was listening to every play, going through it in his head. These guys still have to learn. So I just thought that was bad look for him. He was dancing on the sideline, smiling, bobbing his head with the hoodie on. I thought he should really be engaged. And he needs to learn from.
Well, you know, he was not on the sideline in the first half of the game. He came down.
Well, that's even worse.
I don't know if it was the second half. I think they did that for the purposes of when it's a knee injury. I think that they try to keep some of those players off the sideline.
Well, he should have had the headset on, communicating and going through all the plays, listening to every single play that's run. Because to me, if I want to be the best at what I'm doing, I want to train and learn every day of the job particularly when I'm young at it. So,
well,
because I want him to be better at passing decisively, not only when he has to, and running.
You mean like he
when
has been for
not when he
basically
wants
every
to.
single game of his career until last Thursday night?
He wants to do what now? What was that?
He's an incredibly decisive passer. Jaden is.
Well, the first 2 weeks he has not been.
No, he was
He's been
against the
hesitant.
Giants. Go back and look at the first touchdown
Okay,
pass against Hurts.
We'll agree to disagree, but I wanted him.
There's no disagreeing. I mean, the guy he had the greatest rookie season in the history of the league for a quarterback.
Yes, he did.
was
That
incredibly
last year.
decisive, incredibly accurate. The system allows that. Marcus Mariota is benefiting from that system as well. They're both really benefiting from a super coordinated offense. But if you're implying, which I think you are because you sent me a DM that I was reading right before you came on, that somehow Marcus Mariota, is more decisive as a passer than Jaden, then you just are ignoring the entire 20-game slate from last year. And by the way, the Giant game where he was incredibly decisive at times. But yes, I did think Marcus Mariota was really sharp yesterday. I really did. I thought he really looked good.
We have to pause to praise Marcus Mariota for some reason. But
who did? I led with him today.
It's like he's a Hall of Famer.
I
just want us to be fair.
Well, he's not a Hall of Famer yet. He's not a Hall of Famer yet. But nobody's pausing to praise Marcus Mariota. That's your own sensitivity. I mean, you've been listening to other people who have said he played poorly. I gave him I said he was an A plus if he didn't fumble, and I liked the play in which he fumbled.
Me too. And I think he should play against Atlanta. I think they need to kind of soft bench
soft bench
so he can get right.
What does soft bench
learn.
mean?
I want him to learn.
What's soft bench
like they're doing to J.J. McCarthy. He's not hurt. They're soft benching him.
So he wasn't hurt yesterday?
Why would you say that?
Soft benching means that they're not pleased with his play and they want him to learn something.
Well, it's like he kind of hurt and, you might need some time away. Let's see what this other guy can do. Let's let you learn. These guys are young, Kevin. They're young. They're not polished quite yet. Okay, and I know that Jaden had a lot of college
that's true.
experience,
and he's younger than Marcus Mariota. Actually, you're starting to persuade me. So let's carve out like the next 4 or 5 games. Let Jaden sit back and learn. He's at that point.
He needs to be 100%, so he can have his fast.
Well, no. You implied that it had nothing to do with injury. It was a soft benching. A soft benching,
Kevin.
I'm sorry?
That means he maybe could have played if our backup isn't really
But
that
you don't
good.
want him to play even if he's
there?
ready to play. Yeah. You want a soft benching. You want him to sit back and learn for a while.
Well,
right?
While Mariota's playing the way he is, absolutely. Because when he gets on there, you want to be the best of him.
What do you think Jaden would have done yesterday? He would not have had a good day had he been healthy?
No, not from what I saw the first 2 weeks. No, I think he would have been hesitant. He would have overthrown Terry's pass. He would have instead. Okay, here's a good example. That pass that Mariota threw the ball like sidearm. Everybody said it should have been grounding, but it wasn't.
That was a great play.
Your guy, right? Our guy, Jaden, would have tried to run.
Your guy, no. Got to self-correct there. It is our guy because you are a fan of the team, just not a fan of Jaden.
Well, that's not true. I want people to earn it. I want people to earn what they have. So in that example, Mariota got rid of the ball, and it wasn't a sack. But yet, Jaden would have kept that ball, tried to run out of there, and probably gotten a hit.
Maybe.
Whereas Mariota avoided a hit. If you notice, the defender came up right away.
Jaden's done a pretty good job. Remember the Baltimore game last year when he unloaded it a couple of times to avoid sacks? Yeah, I mean, he didn't.
More of that this year.
Last year, I'm kind of with you. I don't think he earned much last year.
He's still the most hit quarterback. I mean, come on. Last year and this year so far. So.
Last year what?
He's still the most hit quarterback, right? That Mia Kimes?
Yes.
He's still the most hit last year.
That Mia Kimes? What does Mia Kimes mean? I don't even know what that means.
Mia Kimes or whatever. Remember she had that thing where
Mia Kimes? I don't even know what that means.
Well, the lady on ESPN, he's the most
hit
quarterback. She's pointed out that Jaden is the most hit quarterback of all last season, out of all of them.
Okay.
Including these 2 first weeks.
Right. Yes, he's been the most hit quarterback last year, and he was the first 2 weeks this year. And we got to get those down. But I don't think it's because he's playing the position poorly. I don't think that they should soft bench him. I mean, I'll consider it. I'll consider the soft benching. How many games would you soft bench him for?
Well, I'll probably play him against the Chargers. because the Chargers
You bring
are better
Jaden
than
back
Atlanta.
against the Chargers?
Yeah.
Okay, so a 2-game soft benching.
That gives him 3 good weeks of rest because he had basically a week and a half. Plus
Yeah,
another
right.
two. Yeah.
Because of the Packers
Yeah,
game.
then you're right.
Okay, so sit him for the Falcons. Not sit him. We soft benched him for the Raiders. We'll soft bench him for the Falcons game. We'll bring him back for the Chargers game. The opponent that is much better than the two that we just played.
I want him to listen to all the plays and learn. Right. I don't want him being a spectator. I want him to actually be involved in the game.
That particular part of your call is an interesting thing. I'm kind of with you on that. Now, I think that the reason he was in the injury suite, which is the way they described it, is because it's a knee. So I don't know that he should have been on the sideline at all, but I think part of it is he wanted to celebrate Marcus Mariota's game and his teammates and the success that they had. But I don't know that they wanted him anywhere near the sideline area, meaning near the field, as a backup quarterback on headset. You know what I mean? Because of the potential. Look at what happened to Quinn yesterday. They certainly didn't want that to happen to him.
But why was J.J. McCarthy on the sideline? He had an ankle injury.
I don't know. I can't tell you the reason for that. I think the knee and the ligament and maybe the lateral movement is a bit of an issue right now with him, and so they want to protect him by keeping him in the injury suite, but maybe he shouldn't have been on the sideline at all. Maybe he should have sat with the offensive play callers. All right, Sabah, thank you. We have definitely gone beyond the Sabah limit, but the soft benching of Jaden yesterday and the suggestion that they should do it again next week, let's all ponder that for a while. Let's go to Ian. Ian, go ahead. We're following Sabah with Ian. Ian, go ahead.
I know she's a doctor, but I have a hard time believing someone believes that they should soft bench Jaden Daniels. I mean, that's a position.
I don't know. Maybe we could be missing something here. Look, it never hurts a young player to sit back and watch an older, more experienced player. And Marcus has been a phenomenal mentor to Jaden. Maybe Jaden needed this soft benching. Maybe he needed it.
Yeah, I'm not going to take that position at all. I didn't hear your open. I didn't hear your open. And when I called into Max, I said, "This is an Eddie Jordan harvest your nuts type victory," and he said that's what Kevin said.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you, and I think, you always use your Kevinisms of week-to-week league, you never know, and you see that every week. And I had the preseason prediction of 9-8. I don't feel that different now. I think one of my takeaways that you haven't mentioned is a lot of the injuries, it's like, oh, we have the injury bug or this, that, the other. I think that's a little callous because when you sign old players who are injury prone and then they get injured, you can't throw your hands up and say it's bad luck. Austin Eckler, Will Harris, some of these guys are injury prone players. And when they get hurt, that's got to be a reflection a little bit of the GM.
Old player, is he? How old's Will Harris? Is he in his 30s yet?
I think he's 30, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But again, factually, this is the oldest team in the league.
Yes, that's true. But we also know that a guy like Josh Johnson and Tressway. I'm not saying that some of the older players aren't playing, but Bobby Wagner hasn't gotten hurt. Zach Ertz hasn't gotten hurt.
Debo hasn't gotten hurt yet, right?
Von Miller hasn't gotten hurt. I'm sorry, who?
Yeah, Debo is obviously very injury prone, and he hasn't been yet. But my point is,
but Debo's only isn't Debo only 29? Is Debo even 30?
Debo is 29, but I mean, you can agree that his 29 is not commensurate.
Oh, I totally agree with that. But I think the idea that it's, I forget the word you used, but essentially saying it's borderline misleading to be upset, or you're missing the forest for the trees to be upset about their injury proneness because they're an old team. Well, it's not their old players who are getting hurt, with the exception of Eckler.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Will Harris is an older player, but maybe
Will
I'm
Harris
totally
is.
off
I
on
just
that.
pulled it up. He's 29. He turns 30 during the season, late in the season.
Yeah, I think when you hit 30
Came
in
into
the
the league in
NFL, you would call
19.
that an old player, right?
I don't. No, 29. No, 29 is not an old player.
I mean, maybe that's a degree.
By the way,
issue.
Preston
That's a
Smith didn't
degree
help
issue.
their age thing any, did he? But he was inactive yesterday. Anyway, what else from the game? Let's not get.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like you said, a harvest your nuts win. You have a little bit of breathing room on a weaker, potentially Atlanta team. I feel like they should absolutely bring back Jaden. Like that shouldn't even be a conversation. But yeah, I mean, you got to feel positive about a lot of things. I think the concern is the injury, and that's what I was waiting with. But no, overall,
the injuries are piling up, and you can't predict those things. I guess if they were all older players, you could have said we should have seen that coming. That's not been the case yet. I'm not saying it won't be the case. And by the way, I agree with you on Debo. Debo is an older 29. He's having a sensational start to this season. If he stays healthy, they're going to be in good shape offensively because he's a weapon they did not have last year, including as well as De'Ami Brown played at times. But look, it's early. We got a long way to go. 14 games. They needed that one. 1-2 would have been a tough start. They needed to take care of a team that was sort of ripe to be taken care of. Thanks, Ian. Let's go to Lap. Lap, go ahead. Thanks for holding, man.
Hey, man. Hey, we love you, Sabah, man. We just want you to root for the team, man, because we don't know who she like. She always got to take a shot at Jaden, man. You know she wanted Drake May initially, and then she's not rooting for the team.
I think this all stems from the Taylor Heineke stuff.
Yeah, definitely. We know she loves Taylor Heineke, just like I like John Wall. So I understand. What I like, I was really excited to see the offensive players out there, make plays with Lang and Debo on special teams. Luke McCaffrey, they need to get him the ball. I was a little concerned with him coming in, but he knows how to get open, man. He knows how to get open. And I think, they need to use him more, Kevin. They definitely need, because he can help take pressure off of Debo and Terry a lot, bro. If they can get him going. You don't know what's going on with Noah Brown. He's always, like I call him Mr. Glass. But he's always hurt. But and the front seven, I thought they played pretty good considering. I thought that the secondary was going to be the strength coming into the season versus the front seven. But if the front seven can play collectively like that, man, as a unit, I think we got a chance. But the injuries kind of concern me. And I'm with you with Mariota. Mariota looks good. Even when Jaden, if he's hurt or banged up or he's not there, I'm confident that Mariota can come in, and be competitive with a chance to win some games for us, definitely.
I'm thinking.
And I agree with you guys.
What?
I would sit Jaden. I'm sorry, Kevin. This was my last point. I would sit Jaden to the Chargers game and let Mariota rock out with the Falcons, even though it's not going to be an easy win. I think that's a winnable game. And I think Mariota could come in and help us because you got to spread the ball around, man. Make teams respect you, and I think I like what he did yesterday, besides the fumble.
Look, the one point that Sabah made that was spot on is that Marcus Mariota was super sharp and super decisive yesterday. I loved it. I really did. I thought he was outstanding yesterday. All right, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get a couple of more calls in here before Ben joins us at noon. We still got to go around the NFL. How about Maryland? They got a big win. And you know who's a good college football team this year? UVA, and they play Florida State Friday night. I'm calling that right now. They got a shot to win that game outright. Florida State's excellent. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, theteam980.com as well.
All right, it is Monday, September 22nd. Here's what's happening. The Commanders, they get the win over the Las Vegas Raiders by a score of 41-24. Marcus Mariota with a solid performance, throwing for 200-plus yards and a touchdown, including running in another one to top it all off. Injuries continue to pile up for Washington as Terry McLaurin left the game with a quad injury. Marshawn Lattimore left with a concussion. Will Harris fractures his fibula and will be out for the foreseeable future, according to Ian Rappaport. We take a look around the NFC East after yesterday's matchups. The Eagles, they win on a blocked field goal as time expires over the Rams, 33-26. The Cowboys, they get upset by the Chicago Bears, 31-24. And the Giants, another subpar performance, this time against the Kansas City Chiefs. They fall 22-9. Little preseason hockey action, the first of the season last night. The Caps, they get the win against the Boston Bruins by a score of 5-2. Sonny Milano with 2 goals and 2 assists in his first NHL action he's seen since November 4th. Hendrix Lapierre, Bogdan Triniev, and Ryan Chesley all with tallies. Should be some fierce competition for those final few roster spots. The Nats, they play spoiler in their win over the Mets by a score of 3-2. Jacob Young with one of the greatest catches you'll ever see in that 5th inning. Mitchell Parker gets called in for the final few innings of the game and earns the save, giving up only 2 hits and no earned runs. Again, Nats win 3-2. They'll shift their focus to the Atlanta Braves for one final series. Brad Lord expected to get the start versus Hurston Waldrop. First pitch at 7:15. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:45. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1, and you can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Team win, right? As we said, man, complimentary ball, back and forth. Best part of us is all of us doing all of our together, man. It's cool. We'll go through all of it tomorrow. Excellent job getting back to our ways. Hold on. Hey, so a real bam took one on the sideline and popped up like so. DQ.
That was Frankie Louvu there at the end talking about Quinn taking one on the sideline. This from Bryce. Bryce writes, why haven't you mentioned yet that Washington is going to face you-know-who next week? I did mention that Michael Penix Jr. got benched in the game against Carolina yesterday, but Raheem Morris said that Michael Penix Jr. is going to start. They believe in Michael Penix Jr., and they're not, moving on from Kirk just in the event that the Michael Penix Jr. thing doesn't work. He had a horrendous game yesterday, threw 2 picks in the game. One was a pick 6, had a terrible QBR, and Cousins came in late with the score 30-0. I don't think they'll get Penix. They'll get Kirk. I think Penix Jr. will start. The key in facing the Falcons, and there will be plenty of time to talk about this, but you have to protect your quarterback, and then you've got to stop the run. Bijan Robinson is the real deal. Tyler Algier is the real deal. They can really run the football. I don't know what happened yesterday. I haven't watched the game. I will later on in the week. It is weird, though, with the NFL, right? I mean, Carolina in their first 2 games, losing to Jacksonville and on the road against Arizona, and then coming back and beating the snot out of the Falcons, who completely ran the Vikings out of the building last Sunday night in Minneapolis on Sunday Night Football. Weird league, excuse me. And who knows, there could be more weird next week. But I'm pretty sure Cousins isn't going to start unless we find out that Penix Jr. was injured. All right, let's get a few more calls in here before Ben jumps on with us. Cam in D.C. Cam, go ahead.
What's up, Kevin? Appreciate you taking my call.
Sure.
Wanted to get your thoughts on that in the Dan Quinn era, other than Joe Burrow in week 3 of last year. We haven't beaten a team led by a top 10 quarterback. And then if you include Baker and Goff in the playoffs, a team with a top half quarterback, like obviously we've beaten the teams we're supposed to beat. Do you think is missing from us taking that next level of beating the either elite teams or teams with elite QBs? And I'll take it off there.
Well, I mean, you could argue last year Goff and Baker were top 10 quarterbacks, not just top half of the league. Also, the last
I'll take
team.
That's fair, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know Jalen Hurts got hurt in that game, so it's unfair to say that they beat Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts didn't play defense, and they beat that team. They didn't have a lot of top 10 quarterbacks on the schedule last year, right? Like they had Jalen Hurts, if you think he's top 10, twice. They had Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow.
And that's it.
And then if you don't want to put Mayfield and Goff in there, they beat Mayfield, they beat Goff. So.
Yep. And then this year we had Russ, Jordan Love, who I'll say is top 10, and then obviously Geno. So we're beating the teams we're supposed to beat, but,
by the way, beating the teams you're supposed to beat in this league, and they did it last year. And by the way, in a lot of the cases, they smoked some of those teams, the Carolinas, the Clevelands last year, the Arizonas, who am I forgetting? Tennessee. I mean, I think that is a really good trait for a head coach or for a staff, is not to slip up in the spots. Look, there are very few games you should win in the NFL. Those are few and far between. But when they've had them, they've buried the team. Yesterday was one of them, and they did it without their starting quarterback. So, I'm impressed by that, but you got to get more chances at top 10 quarterbacks before we think that that's a thing, in my opinion. But thanks, Cam. Let's go to Bobby. What'd you say, Cam?
I was saying we got a few coming over the next couple months.
Yeah, we're gonna see Herbert. We're gonna see Mahomes. We're gonna see Dak, who we didn't have to face once last year. Who am I forgetting? And Hurts twice.
Yep.
Hurts twice. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Appreciate that. Let's go to Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, finish it up for us. Go ahead.
Hey, Kev. Good win. Yeah, we did what we were supposed to do. You might have answered this already because I've been busy this morning working. Do you think the offense will look different yesterday?
Do I think the offense looked different in what way?
And just
than it did against the Packers?
The first 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, obviously it did against the Pirates, but I'm just saying that it just looked like last year's offense to me, the way we were doing things, and I said something yesterday. Jaden's staying in the pocket a lot. I mean, we need to use his legs more. Marcus, that back foot hit the ground. If it wasn't open, he went through his reads. He was taking off and running, man. We hadn't done a lot of that this year to me by watching. The read option was really good yesterday. I just observing on, what I was looking at. And, Jaden's elite. I'm not saying, I just thought it looked a little bit different. Maybe we were more efficient on how we ran it yesterday. I don't know. There was just something about it.
I would say this. I would say this. There's a massive difference between the Packers and the Raiders. That's number one. You have to acknowledge that. The Raiders are truly a bad football team. And then they were the short rest team. Washington was the well-rested team. That's always an advantage in the NFL. Number two is the Giant game was very close to being and looking like yesterday. 450 yards of offense, 28 first downs or whatever it was. But what happened in that game is they got called for like 13 penalties and they had like 4 or 5 drop passes. Look, they made some mistakes yesterday, just not as many. And let's not forget, you had short fields to work with yesterday. The opening kickoff, you scored on special teams. But I thought Mariota looked super sharp. I thought Jaden in the opener was a B player. It wasn't his, we're comparing it to what we saw last year, but it was very close to a much better performance. He missed Terry deep. That would have changed the whole feel of the game because that would have added, you would basically would have been a 500-yard team in the opener with that play. The Packers are really, really good on defense, and that was ugly. Yesterday, they came out and they dominated the line of scrimmage and they ran the football and they got a kick return. They got a punt return. The other team was horrendous. They weren't very good coming in, but they were really bad yesterday. I thought Mariota looked really sharp, but to me, when Jaden's been really sharp, and at times he was in the Giant game, that's what it looks like. This is the best offense Mariota's been a part of in terms of the scheme for his particular strengths in his entire career. If he had started his career with Cliff, Mariota would have, look, there are other parts of Marcus's game in the past that were, sketchy. He wasn't the most mentally strong player at various times in his career, but he's always been talented. All right, I'm up against it. We got to get to Ben. We'll do that next. You guys are relentless. Leave Sabah alone. She likes Marcus Mariota. She's not a big Jaden fan. You know, I don't know what that stems from. It could be the Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell thing. But yes, I probably gave her too much time today with her suggestion that Jaden's been soft benched. A term, by the way, I had never heard until today. Soft benched. And that they're going to continue, and they should continue with the soft benching for at least another week because Mariota is giving them something great. People, keep in mind that team yesterday that they faced is not a good team, and yesterday was a terrible team. Their offensive line is awful. Their back end defensively, terrible. With that said, Mariota was good. The special teams, 245 return yards. I opened with Jalen Lane. Jalen Lane is, I think he's got the talent to become a star punt returner. And defensively, man, they shut down the run. They got after the quarterback. It was a good day. They took care of an opponent that was ripe for taking care of, and they're 2-1. It's a long season. Do we have Ben yet?
Yeah, Ben's been here.
We do have Ben. Okay. I thought you said we were still trying to get Ben. Ben is with us, as he is every Monday and Friday in this spot, and sometimes in between time at Ben Standig on X, on Twitter. Last Man Standing is his Substack. He's also got a podcast called Last Man Standing. Let's start with your reaction to the win yesterday. Give me what you liked, kind of the big takeaways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, obviously there's a lot to get into from the actual play. You're just mentioning Mariota, who I thought played very well. I thought Cliff Kingsbury called a good game. The defense looked more in line with at least the front wall of the defense looked more in line with what we saw in the Giants game, and all that stuff is true and accurate. And obviously the Dan Quinn hit, hopefully he's okay.
Yeah.
That was notable. But I think to me what stood out the most was, this was a game where, they're coming off the hangover of the Green Bay loss. They have a bunch of injuries, including to their starting quarterback. It would be easy to a certain degree to overlook the underdog team coming in cross country. You've got the travel advantages, the rest advantage, all these things. It would be easy to sort of say, hey, maybe you let your foot off the gas, you're not feeling up to it or whatever. And they didn't do any of that. They came out and played like a team that, if you're a contender, that's the kind of game you have to not only win, but put away. And they didn't just, limp to the finish line and get lucky, or they didn't, they weren't just, as you said, the Raiders are not particularly good, but, they won the game, I would say more than the Raiders lost the game. And that's what, if you're a legit contender, if you think you are one of those teams, that's what you have to do. That's how Kansas City, I'm not comparing them to the Chiefs necessarily, but that's how the Chiefs last year, despite having a kind of a lousy offense all year, kept winning games because they have that, as Rudy Tomjanovich would say, the heart of the champion. So I'm not going overboard in terms of what Washington is, but if you believe that you can really have a shot at being at the top of the heap, that's the kind of game you don't just win. You put the other team away, and they did that. So I think to me that's what stood out the most.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things that I talked about in the open of the show today is they really do have an ideal backup quarterback situation. He is a pro. He is a mentor to the young guy. He is a great sort of leader. He is wise beyond his years, and he can still play, and he's a perfect fit for the offense. I think you could go back, whether it's Arthur Smith or any of the OCs he's had. I don't think Marcus Mariota's been in a better scheme than the one he's in right now. If he had Cliff Kingsbury 6-7 years ago, we may have looked back on Mariota's career differently. But it's in a league in which it's of attrition, and we'll get to the injuries for this group here in a moment. It's just one of the best situations in the league in terms of backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, obviously to not have Jaden Daniels is the biggest news, full stop. But ironically, of all the players they were going to have to replace, John Bates, Noah Brown, maybe to a certain degree, Austin Eckler, The one I was least worried about was replacing Jaden Daniels, because we've seen what Mariota could do in this offense last year in relief. The only question was, he didn't practice essentially in all of training camp because of Achilles tendonitis. Would that change anything, in terms of timing or rust or whatever? Clearly, the answer to that was no. He's looked great. And one thing that stands out to me about Mariota is, typically with pro athletes, the ego, the confidence, the cockiness is first and foremost the thing you recognize with the athlete. And you need that, of course, to play at the highest level. But with him, there is an emotional component, a sensitivity almost to that I think reflects the journey he's had. Obviously, he was the number 2 pick in the draft in 2015, a Heisman winner. He had some success with the Titans, but maybe never quite lived up to that draft status. His time in Atlanta ends really abruptly. He had to be, go to the backup mode after that. And to come here, and you can just tell he means so much to him to be believed in by his teammates, by his coaches. And that, again, it feels almost like it's just, we're witnessing his personal journey, like his therapy sessions almost out there on the field. And, that's a really endearing quality. And, that's why his teammates really, really rally around him.
And there's, I'm forgetting who wrote the story last year. It wasn't you. It was somebody from the Post. It been Nikki, I forget. But the stuff that he dealt with in Philadelphia, he had major, the Atlanta exit was a very difficult exit. He was injured, and then he essentially left the team. Then he came back to the team. It was a very difficult parting with Arthur Smith. And, the story sort of talked about the challenges that he had. And then he got to Philadelphia, and he basically got the yips, had major anxiety issues, didn't think he could play anymore, was dreading going out there. This really has been such a great spot and a great land for him. And you got to love it. I mean, he's only 32 years old. It's not like he's that old. So I agree with you on all fronts. All right. Before we get to, one of the big takeaways from yesterday, which is the injuries are piling up. Look, the Raiders are not a good test, especially yesterday. Their offensive line was a mess. But, man, you talked about taking care of kind of the teams you're supposed to take care of. Daron Payne takes care of the offensive lines that he should take care of. This is that contract year for him. They're much better up front than they were. I'm wondering what you think, because I want to believe in what I've seen against the Giants and against the Raiders, but I know what the competition was. I'm such a Duran guy, and I thought he was phenomenal again yesterday, as was Armstrong and a few others. What do you think we're seeing from this defense through 3 games? What is it? And speak to just Daron Payne in sort of a quasi-contract year and having 2 of the 3 games that he's had.
Well, look, I think this is a great question that you bring up. They have played the extremes so far in 3 weeks. They played, I know Green Bay lost yesterday inexplicably to Cleveland, but they looked like arguably the best team in the league through 2 games, and at a minimum, they're a top contender. And then you have the Giants and the Raiders, 2 teams. And if I told you right now we're going to be, have top 5 picks in the draft next year, you couldn't really argue against that. So they've been, again, they took advantage of the teams that they should. They got worked by a team that maybe, again, is a true heavyweight in this league. So it is kind of hard to tell exactly where they're at, particularly with the defense. But yeah, I mean, Daron Payne, I don't really put too much into PFF's grades, but they graded him out as the number 1 defender for Washington in this game, and hard to argue.
Daron Payne was the number 1 for PFF.
Yeah, for Washington yesterday. Yeah. He was.
What was Armstrong? I actually thought it would have been close between he and Armstrong. Do you know? I'm just curious.
Yeah, they've got Payne, Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, and Armstrong as the top guys. And obviously, a lot of these guys are going to score high yesterday just because of how well the front 7 in particular performed, and all those guys are front 7 guys. So, yeah, look, I mean, Deron Payne, when he's right, is a menace. And, we constantly saw in the backfield that he was making, that he was there, didn't get in the sack category, but he was certainly a presence. And, he'll help allow other guys to do their work. But, yeah, I mean, like you said, though, it's a little hard to gauge this. I mean, not only are the Giants and Raiders not good teams overall necessarily, they may have like the two worst offensive lines in the league, or at least they're in the discussion for who is
well,
at
and
the
Andrew
bottom.
Thomas wasn't there, and their best offensive lineman didn't play an offensive snap yesterday.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's why it is hard to kind of gauge where Washington is, particularly on defense. And again, we'll get to the injuries in a second. But I think the good thing, at least though, is you lose Dietrich Wise, and obviously it's a blow. Is a guy they brought in with that size and the run defense ability to help them there. But they've got a lot of bodies. They've got a lot of guys that they can bring in, and maybe it's they don't have that Max Crosby type, but they have a lot of players who can impact the game. And if they can do that even when they're playing against some of the better lines in the league, then that's going to go a long way towards his defense being very credible. As we know, if you don't have much of a pass rusher, you can't collapse the pocket or stop the run, it makes it so much harder on everybody else. They've done that in 2 games. Let's see here. The next 2 weeks are going to be some interesting opponents in Atlanta and the Chargers. So let's see how they do, and maybe we'll get a better read at that point.
All right, let's talk about a big story again for the second straight game, the injuries coming out of this one. Will Harris looks like he's going to be lost for a while, if not maybe for the rest of the year. The report from Ian Rappaport was a fractured fibula. I saw your tweet and read it from earlier that they're working out Darnell Savage, a guy that they wanted to draft. Snyder didn't want to draft him, but the personnel people wanted to draft Darnell Savage back in 2019. But let's start with Will Harris. Let's, keep it with the secondary, and then let's end with Terry. Give us, what you think we're going to learn later today.
Yeah, injuries were not a primary topic with Dan Quinn except for his own injury. So we didn't really get much of an update from there. But yeah, Ian Rappaport reported that Harris has got a fractured fibula now. We'll see. We'll find out how long that is. But obviously, to look to bring in a guy like Savage, I don't know if they're working anybody else out, but to sort of go to the top of the line of the players who are out there. He was just released recently by the Jags. But, he's a guy that's been in this league, a former first-round pick, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, it says something right there about Harris. Now, safety happens to be, one of, if not the deepest position they have on the roster. Jeremy Reeves played a ton yesterday. But they also lost Percy Butler in the game. He only played, I think, 1 snap. He had a hip injury. My sense is he's okay, but, I don't know if okay means he'll be ready against Atlanta, or at least he's just avoids IR. So we'll see how that goes. But look, Quan Martin's been, strong as expected. Tyler Owens is a physical freak, and Reeves, a guy who kind of always felt should be playing a little bit more defensively, but just hasn't because of a variety of reasons. They still have those guys, but now to bring in a guy like Savage, and I'm not going to, act like he's Ken Houston, but obviously he's a guy with experience in the league, and therefore, that should be a guy that can help the group. But it's tough. Harris. It's ironic on some level that Harris was playing in the same game as the guy he replaced, Jeremy Chin, and he brings more of that pass coverage and versatility than Chin, who was obviously more of like that hard-hitting, strong safety type. And they really, I think wanted that element in the secondary this year. And now it sounds like you said, at least for a few weeks, they're going to have to go without. I don't know if that means it's Reeves, if Percy Butler is available, maybe it's him, but obviously it's it hurts the secondary to lose a guy you brought in to be a starter, and he's done that, and to 3 weeks in to have him out is obviously hardly ideal.
Yeah, I mean, they're piling up. We'll find out more about the seriousness of these. What about Terry? Is he okay? The quad?
So because he had the injury, he did not have to talk with us yesterday, and he chose not to. He walked out fine. I didn't notice anything. It wasn't like he was on, it wasn't on crutches. I didn't notice any kind of limp. So I don't want to speculate and say he's fine, but it didn't seem like it was a particular issue. So obviously that's hopeful. But, in his case, we've all been, worried to a degree when you miss all of camp and you're having to get yourself into shape while playing games. Football shape, does that lead to any type of, leg injury, soft tissue injury, what have you? So, hopefully it's not a big deal, but again, we'll find out from Quinn. I don't know how much we'll find out today, but at least we'll get some sense today. But to stick with the secondary, by the end of the game, not only were Harris and Butler out, but Lattimore and Trey Amos were also on the sideline. Now,
Right.
Lattimore was getting checked for a concussion. He later returned to the sideline, still in full uniform, and he was riding a stationary bike. So seems like he might have been okay. I don't have a sense for Amos. I haven't heard anything that suggests the worst, but I honestly just have not heard much about that. So, hopefully that's not a big deal in either of those cases, because now it'd be getting really out of hand. But yeah, to have those four guys, I mean, fortunately they had a big enough lead yesterday that it didn't really matter, but they gave up that 61-yard touchdown to Trey Tucker when they were missing a lot of those guys. So, again, Atlanta's got, I know Michael Penix wasn't exactly killing it yesterday, but you've still got Drake London and so on. So they're going to need all their defensive backs next game, and hopefully they'll have, other than Harris, hopefully they'll have the rest of them.
Talking to, of course, Ben Standig. All right. We're going to be on Jaden watch this week. Did we learn anything? I mean, the report from Jeremy Fowler is that he just wasn't close to playing yesterday. There's still some question about week 4, meaning the Atlanta game. What do you think, you can, say with relative confidence right now about Jaden Daniels at Atlanta Sunday?
Well, I don't know. Confidence is a tough one when, they're not, I mean, we still don't even know the exact nature of the injury and all that. And, I know I hadn't heard what Jeremy had to say, but, when you look at last week, Dan Quinn said that Jaden was ultimately limited in Friday's practice after missing the previous 2 days, but limited was like limited. It wasn't like limited on the verge of possibly playing. It felt like limited, like, well, he was able to run a little bit, so that was positive. Sounds like it's positive, but in terms of actually playing, sounds like it wasn't, like you said,
right,
that close. So, look, I don't imagine that because Mariota played well yesterday, that's going to give the coaches to say, hey, you know what, let's let Jaden sit another week. I heard what you were saying before about soft bench. I don't know what to say about that. But
I had a caller.
Yeah.
She's a familiar caller. Her name's Sabah. Suggested that there's a soft benching going on.
Yeah, I'm from there. We were joking in the press box yesterday in the second half with Grant and Chris Russell about how many callers they think we're going to call in to suggest that Mariota should just keep playing. And anyway,
well, I had one. Yes,
you did,
yeah.
You did. But I do wonder. Look, they won the game, right? So that's important. And then B, Mariota did play pretty well. The offense did look. I would say the offense looked start to finish looked better than it probably had in any. Certainly in Green Bay, and I would probably argue the Giants game was a little fits and starts. But maybe that says to them, hey, if Jaden's even still somewhat borderline, let's just stay with Mariota because of the fact he was so effective. And, obviously, I don't know what happened to Atlanta yesterday, but they were a mess. So maybe that gives them, if they had lost and Mariota didn't play well, then maybe you're saying, hey, we got to, we can do what we have to do. I'm sure if Jaden can play, he will go in. The question is just like, where when you get to that sort of borderline scenario, he practices some this week, maybe not a lot. Maybe if it's, week 18, you need to win to make the playoffs, he plays, but in week 4, maybe he doesn't have to. So that's, I think, what we're going to have to keep an eye on is how close is he, and does the fact that Mariota looked as good as he did allow the coaches to say, let's give it another week. And look, the following game is in LA against the Chargers. That's going to be, not discounting Atlanta, but that looks like to be the best team that we'll face here in this stretch. So maybe you rest them up for that game to give you as best shot as possible.
Look, I mean, putting the conversation of, you think you could beat this next opponent with Marcus and, he's not. We just don't know what the injury is. It might be a 3 to 5 week injury that they just haven't really shared with us at this point. I don't think it's that based on a lot of the reporting. But man, I expect Quinn to be just as evasive today as he was a week ago, leading up till, Friday of last week. And, at the very least, even if Jaden's ready to go and they're going to play him, on Sunday, I guess we'd know that on Wednesday with respect to practice, obviously. But he'll take this as long as he can without sharing any of the information. But that, to me, more important than any of this stuff is, what's the injury? And is it, is there any sort of concern that it's not just a 1 weeker? Because, one of the real dangers would be to view Atlanta the same way you viewed the Raiders. The Raiders game was the perfect NFL setup game. We see it every year with the rest advantage, the west to east. They're not very good in the trenches, in particular, with the exception of Crosby. But Atlanta is going to be a desperate, dangerous team at home, and it's week to week, as we all know when it comes to the NFL. But really, the big question that doesn't have an answer is, what was the injury and how serious is it? I mean, for all we know, they know right now this. Oh, no, he's not going to play until the Bears on Monday night. In a few weeks, he's out a few weeks.
Yeah,
right?
No, I mean, we like I said, we don't know. We all get it that these guys are all hesitant to share too much when it comes to injuries. Dan Quinn went so far as to say, he's not a medical guy. So the specific questions about Jaden's injury, we have to ask the doctor.
Yeah.
Of course, we
he
don't
was
have access.
Squirming on those questions Friday.
Yeah, of course, I'm going to be like, cool, can we talk to the doctors? Because obviously the answer to that is a big fat no. So, it is what it is. I don't know we'll get any more information out of him today. I'm sure we'll try it to some degree, or if not today, then Wednesday when the injury report has to come out. But yeah, no, I mean, look, that is the question: is how significant is the injury, and how close is he to playing? And we'll see. I mean, again, at some point he needs to come back. But if they have to go for the next couple of weeks, if that's the way it breaks down, they have to. Mariota gives them a puncher's chance and then some to keep winning. So at a minimum, they've got that. But let's see what we can find out.
Were we a 56-yard field goal miss away from having a slew of kickers coming in on Tuesday?
I think we might have been, right? I mean, because even Dan Quinn after the game was like, hey, look, we have a lot of confidence in Matt Gay, but that confidence has to be rewarded by making kicks. And, fortunately he made his last two after missing that 37-yarder. It's one thing to keep saying he's really good from 50 in, and then you miss a 37-yarder. That's not good. But yeah, he did come back, made those two kicks. I mean, that was ironic that, right as Dan Quinn gets knocked down is when Gay hits the long one. So yeah, I think he probably saved himself from having other kickers traipse into Ashburn this week. But yeah, I mean, it's at least on the edge as he continues to be erratic. And yeah, obviously you can't have that. I don't even, I'm not suggesting that there's a great kicker sitting there on the sidelines, but as we know, there's always, kickers like relief pitchers in baseball. There's a guy who maybe was somebody you've never heard of, and all of a sudden he lights out just for random reasons. So hopefully for his sake, they don't have to go that route, but I think it was pretty close.
Lastly, what should fans be thinking about Brandon Coleman right now?
It's a great question. Look, Dan Quinn said that it was a competition at the guard spots, and they felt that Chris Paul and Andrew Wiley were the winners there. I don't know. It seems to me, and this is just sort of speculating, but look, I think in the case of Wiley and Allegretti, to me that was just a little more obvious. I talked about that throughout the summer, that Wiley just to me seemed like maybe a better option for them, and they went there. Coleman, a guy who was a third-round pick last year, was their starting left tackle for most of last season, was put into the position to be now a starting left guard. This is a building block piece. The same argument made for why Josh Connerly shouldn't be benched because it's a long-term situation should logically apply here to Coleman, and they said it was not injury related, even though he was hurt. He was on the injury report earlier in the week and so on. It almost makes me think that like they were trying to, I don't know, send a message, light a fire under him, or that type of deal. Because obviously look, I mean, Chris Paul played very well. And Chris Paul had a good summer. And if they just felt, hey, flat out, Chris Paul is a better guy right now. And it's not like Chris Paul is an old guy. I mean, hypothetically, if he became the starter, he's still in his rookie contract right now. So it's not like he's the older guy and it's just a fill-in. But at the same point, you would think that Coleman would be somebody that they would want to consider to continue using. But I don't know. At best, I can tell maybe it is some sort of message warning. Hey, man, you got to do better. You got to show us more. He did through week 2, and it's obviously incredibly early. But Coleman was among the league leaders in pressures and allowed and hurries and things like that. So it's not like he was playing great, but obviously everybody kind of was rough against Green Bay. So that was a really, really interesting message. And I kudos to the staff for doing it. It obviously worked out well yesterday. We'll see how it goes forward. But I would imagine, even though Dan Quintet, the competition is still ongoing, it would be pretty surprising at this point to not see Chris Paul and Andrew Wiley back out there again for week 4.
Yeah, not to mention, Wiley, a veteran, Allegretti is too. But just maybe, giving Connerly Jr. a little bit more confidence next to him, even though he did get matched up against Crosby a few times, and it was not a favorable matchup. But lastly, actually, the running back situation was so interesting. I mean, they had 3 backs in the backfield on a couple of plays with Debo back there. But Rodriguez got the start. I suggested, and I don't know if Quinn even answered this, I suggested that they came out with the idea of really punching the Raiders physically in the mouth to start this game because of, just the nature of this kind of setup for a game. And they went with their most physical players. After that kickoff return, they had Trent Scott in there. We talked about that on Friday, 6 offensive linemen, heavy personnel. And they went with their most physical running back. But I would say it's still fluid week to week in terms of who's in the huddle on the first possession of the game. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the way we talk about the who starts at running back, to me, it's a game plan thing, the scripted plays. But I think I talked about this with you last week, that obviously you don't want to lose Austin Eckler for the season the way they did. But that scenario now allowed them to bring up Chris Rodriguez and give Cliff Kingsbury that aggressive power runner that they didn't have in the lineup the first 2 games, having traded Brian Robinson and all that. So I don't want to say silver lining or any of those kinds of things, but it did allow that. And then he, as you said, came straight into the game and said, okay, we are going to run this ball right at you. Obviously, they were given a great short field after the Debo kick return, and then Rodriguez ran the ball from the 27 to the 2 on the next 4 carries. And like you said, Trent Scott was in there a bunch. They didn't run 12 personnel with 2 tight ends much, but they did have Trent Scott in there for 19 plays as that 6 offensive lineman, and they ran the ball on 17 of them. None of that is coincidental. They, said, hey, this is what we're going to do. Again, the Raiders aren't particularly good. They were actually good against the run through 2 weeks, but not yesterday.
They were okay against the run, yes.
Yeah, but no, I agree. I think that was a message, and I think this is going to be, a running back by committee scenario, and all the 3 guys can do certain aspects. You've got the power runner, the home run hitter, the versatile veteran. None of them individually at this point are worthy of being, that bell cow guy. But collectively, they have the right skill sets that if Kingsbury can keep mixing and matching, they can take advantage of what they can do well and be productive.
All right. Good job. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you later.
Always a pleasure, Kevin. See you.
Ben Standig, everybody, at Ben Standig on X on Twitter. When we come back, you'll hear my conversation late yesterday afternoon with Luke McCaffrey after he had his first touchdown of his career. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and the team980.com.
On the football field, Mariota just running it.
And here throwing it because he wants to close the game out, but instead McCaffrey will take it into the end zone. He didn't necessarily have to seal it, but when you have that chance, you don't want to pass it up.
3-yard touchdown pass to Luke McCaffrey, the first of his NFL career. Noah Brown was out yesterday. An opportunity for him to get more snaps, to get a couple of targets. And Marcus Mariota found him 3 times on 3 targets, including the first touchdown catch of his career. During my post-game podcast last night, Luke McCaffrey jumped on with me from the locker room following the 41-24 win. This is what it sounded like. Luke McCaffrey, 3 catches, 56 yards, including that 43-yard touchdown pass from Marcus Mariota late in the game. You know, you have a lot of fans. A lot of people believe that Luke McCaffrey can do a lot more on this team as a part of this offense. I know you're modest because I've had you on the show before, but how did it feel to get into the end zone for the first time in your career?
Hey, that was awesome. That was a fun team win, kind of on all cylinders. So great to be out there.
You know, I know you have a sense of this, and I've already had you on my show, I think, once or twice, and I know how modest you are. But you did hear the Luke chants, right there. You're a favorite of a lot of fans because they see a lot of potential in you. So what was your reaction to that?
It was a lot of fun. I was pretty excited. Sometimes when you're in the moment, you can't help but just be tunnel vision. But that's always exciting. It's so fun. I think we had such a great crowd. The community came out today, and it was a blast.
Tell me about the week before we got to today. When during the week did you have a pretty good sense? Did the offense have a pretty good sense that Marcus was going to be the starting quarterback?
I think we kind of prepare every week, just whatever we need. You know, Jaden wasn't practicing, so we were preparing with him, and I think he did such a good job this week. And the way that he led, the way that he kind of set the foundation for the week was pretty cool. And super grateful for him. And I think the whole team just felt his energy.
You're talking about Marcus.
Yeah.
So tell me about his game today. I mean, it started quickly. There were big plays, chunk plays. He was tucking it and running it on some of those read options. Overall, you know, as you were in the game or out of the game, what did you think of Marcus Mariota's day?
Yeah, I think he left off exactly where he practiced this week. And I think we set the tone just the way that we, you know, approached every single day, every single practice this week. And I think it was cool to see that translate to the game. And I think from him personally, that was the biggest note is it was kind of just clean the whole week. And then when that translates to the game, that's kind of how it's supposed to go.
Are there any differences between Marcus and Jaden when it comes to kind of personality and being in the huddle with them? They seem very similar.
Oh, they're very similar. They both bring great energy. They're both great teammates. They both kind of exude that love for the game that you look for.
The game plan doesn't change much at all, right? With Marcus in there instead of Jaden?
No, we have a great game plan. I mean, it changes week to week no matter what, but they're pretty similar skill set type players, so it's a lot of fun.
What did you guys, you know, kind of have on the board as the keys offensively going into the game?
I think this week the biggest thing that we had was just focus on the team. You know, I think DQ has a great quote that's the best part about our team is the team. And so just doing your job, doing one thing at a time, and then executing that and executing it at the highest level you possibly can. And I think it was fun to see that come out. I'm sure there'll be coaching points and things we can learn from, but for the most part, it's exciting when you can get that done.
You're back on kickoffs with Debo. You had a kickoff return today. It looked like there was a bit of an opening. You kind of stumbled a little bit. You've been pretty good on returns. What happened on that one? Because I thought, here we go again with another big return.
Yeah, that one should have been a big return. That's something that I'm going to want back in film when we go rewatch it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've done a really good job when you've had that opportunity. Talk about the big day for Jalen Lane with that 90-yard punt return. What have you guys kind of sensed that something big was coming from him?
yeah, I think on the team side of things, we're always pretty intact. And I think when you have a bunch of guys who kind of can fly around, and then you combine that with Debo and Jalen back there, who are explosive playmakers, it's a good combination because you kind of get both sides of it. And I think we have that. I think we can continue to, continue to do what we're doing on special teams, and it's a lot of fun.
What's the addition of Debo Samuel meant to this offense?
It's been awesome. I think as a fan, it's got to be fun to watch, but as a player, it's just exciting. He's explosive. He's consistent, and so it's a lot of fun to be out there with him.
Luke, I'll say it again. I think there are a lot of people out there that want to see you continue to get more chances, more opportunities, because they think you'll make them look good if you get those opportunities. How do you view sort of your overall involvement offensively in particular?
I don't know. I don't think that's my mentality at all. I think I love the game. I'm blessed to be out here every day, and I think every single opportunity I get, I'm just trying to do my job at the highest level possible. That's kind of where my mind is. I'm so grateful to just have an opportunity to be here, and so I think things will happen naturally if you just focus on your job and have fun doing it. And I think our team is so special, and I think you have a bunch of guys who have that mentality, and when you have that, the combination of it grows into a team, into a community, into a unit, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of that.
When Noah Brown isn't there, what is the offense missing?
I think Noah's such a good player. I think he brings a lot to the table, and it hurt to not have him out there today, but I'm excited for him to get healthy.
I know a lot of people are excited about your day. Congratulations on it, Luke. Keep it up. Can't wait for the next one. Appreciate you doing this.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
That was Luke McCaffrey after the game yesterday. Good day for him. All right, when we come back, what a wild day in the NFL. Blocked kick day in the NFL. We'll go around the league. I'll also have a minute or two on what was really a signature win for Mike Locksley in his time at Maryland. Maryland went to Wisconsin and blew out the Badgers. They are 4-0. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. And you can watch us now on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well when you get there.
All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Here's what's happening. The Washington Commanders, they exit FedEx Field with the win over the Las Vegas Raiders, 41-24. Marcus Mariota with a solid performance, throwing for 200 yards and a touchdown. Plus, he ran in one more on top of it all. The injuries continue to pile up for Washington as Terry McLaurin left the game with a quad injury. Marshawn Lattimore left with a concussion, and Will Harris fractured his fibula and will be out for the foreseeable future, according to Ian Rappaport. Looking around the NFC East, the Eagles, they win on a blocked field goal as time expired over the Rams, 33-26. Cowboys, they get upset by the Chicago Bears, 31-14, and the Giants, another subpar performance from them, this time against the Kansas City Chiefs, 22-9, the final score. The Caps, they get a win in the preseason, their first one of the year, against the Boston Bruins by a score of 5-2. Sonny Milano with 2 goals and 2 assists in his first NHL action since November 4th. Hendrix Lapierre, Bogdan Triniev, and Ryan Chesley, all with tallies. Should be some fierce competition for those final few roster spots. The Nats, they play spoiler in a win over the Mets yesterday. Jacob Young, one of the greatest catches you'll ever see in the 5th inning. Plus, Mitchell Parker was called in for the final few innings of the game and earns the save, only giving up 2 hits and 0 earned runs. Nats win 3-2. They will shift their focus back to the Atlanta Braves for one final series before taking on the Chicago White Sox to close out their season. Brad Lord expected to be on the bump versus Hurston Waldrop. First pitch at 7:15. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:45. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Den's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Yeah, he's feeling comfortable. And how about this? Turn your back to the defense.
Let's one go. Got a man. That's nuts. Touchdown, Maryland.
Yeah,
How about Malik Washington to Shalik Knott? 62 yards, fourth quarter. Terps had a 27-3 lead over Wisconsin. Look, Wisconsin's bad. Not a good football team at all. With that said, Maryland on the road, they haven't had a big road win like this. They were a 10-point underdog in this game. They are 4-0 now. They get a bye week, and then they get Washington, who's undefeated, but they play Ohio State this week in College Park on October 4th. Good for Mike Locksley. Good for the Terps. The defense was outstanding. The special teams were outstanding in this game, and their freshman quarterback, Malik Washington, did what he had to do. He made some big third down throws, hit that big one late. That was part of a 99-yard drive. Maryland surprisingly 4-0. Look, the first three were not big-time opponents. They were all at home. But going to Wisconsin, no matter how much Wisconsin has struggled, and dominating the Badgers on their home field is a good job by Maryland. Can't wait for them to come home in 2 weeks to face Washington in a Big Ten conference game. Maryland against Washington State. Yes, the university, UW, in a big game. All right, let's go around the NFL.
Joshua Carty has it blocked again! This time Jordan Davis! The big man looks for the icing on one big cake! Eagles hang on!
Too bad we couldn't watch this game in the 4 o'clock window. It was on simultaneously with our game. Philadelphia was down 26-7 in this football game, and then they decided to let Jalen Hurts open it up, and he opened it up with A.J. Brown in particular in the second half, and they roared back from a 26-7 deficit to beat the Rams 33-26. That was a game-winning field goal attempt for Carty, the Rams kicker. Jordan Davis blocked it and returned it for a score. It was the second blocked kick of the game. Jalen Carter had a blocked field goal as well. I think this was a matchup of two NFC heavyweights. I do. And Philadelphia, they were booing them as they went into the locker room at halftime down 19-7. Hurts had struggled. Barkley had struggled. And then Hurts got hot, and A.J. Brown literally took the game over. What a football game. In the beginning of like a stretch here at the end of the 1 o'clock window of blocked field goals. This is what happened in Cleveland as Green Bay was getting ready to line up for the go-ahead field goal with 27 seconds to go.
Daniel Whelan the hold. The kick is blocked. It is blocked. The Browns get the swat and turn the Packers away.
A few plays later, Joe Flacco finds David Njoku over the middle on a play that started with 12 seconds to go. It was a professional operation, getting up, spotting the ball, helping the ref, and getting the clock stopped where their kicker booted a 55-yarder to beat the Packers 13-10. Jordan Love had a terrible interception in this game, but just goes to show you just don't know. I will say this, and I've been talking about this since the opener. It may have been the matchup of the best two defensive teams in the NFL. Cleveland is not just Myles Garrett, but their first-round pick, Mason Graham from Michigan, is a dominant rookie interior defensive lineman. The Browns should easily be 2-1 on the season. They should have beaten Cincinnati in the opener. They're pesky, to say the least. Green Bay, with all the rest on the road, they were up 10-0 with about 5 minutes to go in the game, and they lose 13-10. How about another blocked kick? The Bucs lining up 26-20 to go up by 9 and, by the way, get the cover before this happened.
Field goal attempt is blocked. Scooped up and will be taken all the way for a Jets touchdown. Will McDonald returns it into the end zone.
Unbelievable stretch. These were all happening simultaneously. I don't know if you guys were watching on Red Zone or the ticket. We had a couple of screens up. We were watching it. Washington's game was coming down to the, very drama-less ending. But 3 blocked field goals at the end of that 1 o'clock window. What's the deal? I mean, I understand Carter and Davis. I mean, they are going to get hands on balls. Garrett didn't block it, actually, for Cleveland, although he had a couple of block kicks last year. That one gave the Jets the lead with 1:50 to go. But Baker Mayfield did it again, drove the Bucs down the field. 3 straight wins for the Bucs, 3 straight last-minute game-winning drives led by Baker Mayfield. But it was incredible drama at 1 o'clock. And then we got to the late window, and the Cowboys matched up against Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the Bears at Soldier Field.
To hear the Bears, a little flip to Swift, trying to get a flea flicker. It's way up there. Williams recovers, throws a seed, has a man, is caught for a touchdown. Luther Burden's first in the league.
God, I loved Luther Burden coming out of Missouri. 3 catches, 101 yards for him. He started off very quickly. Caleb Williams, 4 touchdowns, 19 of 28 for 298, an 86.6 QBR, a 142.6 passer rating. How bad is the Dallas defense? Russell Wilson last week, Caleb Williams this week. The Cowboys are okay offensively, and Javonte Williams is running the ball well, and Pickens now, I guess CeeDee Lamb turned an ankle in the game yesterday. They don't think it's that serious, but just how horrific is Dallas's defense. The Cowboys fall to 1-2. The Bears get their first win of the year. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. The Giants hosting the Chiefs.
Mahomes putting it up for grabs again for Thornton. That time he reached around his body to catch it. At the 1, Thornton. Too good.
Russell Wilson, right? Can't play a lick against our team. Then has one of the games of his career against the Cowboys last week and was truly, once again, horrific last night against the Chiefs. A 6.5 QBR for Russell Wilson, who threw 2 interceptions in the game. And if you were up watching this and you had the Giants like I did late, on the final drive, they got first and goal. He throws 3 of the worst passes you will ever see. The Chiefs get their first win of the season. They may have discovered something in Tyquan Thornton, their 6'3" wide receiver, who had an incredible catch last night. Had a touchdown and a long 33-yard great catch after a drop on the previous play. The Chiefs get to 1-2, man. They had to get that win. They get the Ravens next week at Arrowhead. The rest of the games, we'll get to some of them tomorrow. The 49ers had a Mac Jones-led drive at the end that led to a walk-off field goal. How about the Chargers and Justin Herbert's throw to Keenan Allen? They win on a walk-off field goal. They're 3-0. Pittsburgh got a late touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers to beat New England. The Colts are 3-0. Daniel Jones and Indy are rolling. They have punted in 3 games, I think just twice at this point. The Vikings had one of the great defensive performances in the history of the game, literally yesterday, in their 48-10 win over Cincinnati. Cornerback Isaiah Rodgers had a interception return and fumble return in the game. And somebody tweeted out late yesterday, he had the highest graded PFF performance for a defensive player ever. And then Washington's opponent next week, the Falcons, were horrendous in a 30-0 loss at Carolina. That'll be a story to watch. Raheem Morris came right out and said that Michael Penix Jr. will start on Sunday. But there will be pressure if they lose that game to go back to you-know-who. All right, we're done. Keep in mind, Dan Quinn talks today at 3:30. Chris Russell will have the information on that. We'll find out more about all of the injuries. But a good win yesterday. A feel-good win, too, other than the injuries. Marcus Mariota played great, and they are 2-1 heading to Atlanta in a game in which they are an early 2.5-point favorite. Stay tuned. Chris is next.